Chapter 902. Bai Yueran adjusted her expression and coughed. She walked to Hua Xiaoheng's side and smiled at Kai Xingnan, who was standing in front of them. Are you Madam Kai? I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time, but we're a bit busy today and don't have time to entertain you. Please go back first. When we're free in a few days, let's arrange a time to talk. Kai Xingnan had been back in the country for less than a month, but she had already gotten to know most of the upper echelons of the Wuxia Empire. The situation in the Wuxia Empire and the United States were very different, but there were also similarities. In the United States, the Senate, the government, and the court system were separated. In the Wuxia Empire, the Senate, the government, and the military coexisted. Courts were divided into ordinary courts and military courts. The former was under the jurisdiction of the government's Ministry of Justice, while the latter was under the jurisdiction of the military. Like the United States, the Wuxia Empire's upper and lower houses of parliament were both elected by the people. The elected members of parliament represented the interests of all parties. There were many interest groups behind them, and there were even foreign forces mixed in. But this is normal in any country with democratic elections. Lobby groups that represent the interests of all parties are legitimate, and lobby groups can represent foreign powers. As long as everyone played according to the rules, it was allowed. Speaker Long was the Speaker of the Senate and had been a member of the Senate for more than 30 years. From a fledgling member of the Senate to the powerful Speaker of the Senate, his status was certainly not ordinary. Moreover, as the Speaker of the House of Lords, he had the right to recruit personal assistants just like the Prime Minister. Although it was paid for by the state, it was still within his power. The fact that the voters chose him meant that they recognized this privilege. For example, the newly elected President of the United States did not hesitate to place his daughter, son-in-law, and son into important positions in the presidential palace. No one said that he was nepotistic because that was how everyone played. The President of the United States also needed the permission of the Senate to appoint government officials. But for the officials of the presidential palace, only the President had the final say. This was considered his personal sphere of influence, similar to the existence of an advisor in the ancient Wuxia Empire. The only difference was that in ancient times, the advisors were supported by the officials themselves. However, the officials in the presidential office of the United States, although they were within the president's personal sphere of influence, were supported by the country. Now, Kai Xingnan was the chief legal advisor that Speaker Long had privately chosen to provide legal support and services for his personal affairs. He had yet to enter the council's special office. But with her momentum, it was only a matter of time. As long as she could pass the background check. In order to achieve this goal, Kai Xingnan had put in a lot of effort in the upper-class families of the Wuxia Empire. Kai Xingnan had long heard of Bai Yueran, the chief of the judicial department of the Special Operations Forces. She was very appreciative of professional women who held high positions at such a young age, so she treated Bai Yueran kindly. May I ask if you are Director Bai? Miss Kai knows me? Bai Yueran raised her eyebrows in surprise. She couldn't help but be more wary of Kai Xingnan. I've heard my uncle, Prime Minister Tan, and Speaker Long mention that you've already made a name for yourself in the legal world at such a young age. You made a name for yourself in the International Court of Justice at The Hague all those years ago. I'm very impressed. As Kai Xingnan spoke, she took the initiative to shake hands with Bai Yueran. Bai Yueran smiled even more meaningfully. She even knows about my case at The Hague International Court of Justice. Miss Kai is really considerate. Of course. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win every battle. Kai Xingnan laughed heartily and withdrew her hand. She took out the stack of documents in her hand and handed them to Bai Yueran. Since Director Bai is here, please take a look at these documents for me. Your Major General Hua doesn't allow me to enter, so I think this request is a bit illegal. Bai Yueran didn't take her documents. She put her hands behind her back and stood as straight as Hua Xiaoheng. Miss Kai, you only know one side and not the other. First of all, I'm not a professional at checking documents, so I can't tell if they're real or fake, so it's useless even if you give them to me. Kai Xingnan's expression finally changed. She interrupted Bai Yueran. Director Bai is saying that my documents are fake? I'm not taking the blame for this. Don't be angry. I didn't say whether your documents are real or fake. I just said that I don't have the authority to check your documents. Bai Yueran said with a smile. Her tone was very kind, which made the straightforward Kai Xingnan seem a bit unreasonable. Kai Xingnan finally understood what it felt like to have a needle in a velvet glove. She took back her documents and said slowly, "Does it have to be so complicated? Are you really not deliberately making things difficult for me?" Miss Kai, how can you say that? You came back from the United States and have been a practicing lawyer in the United States for many years. Don't you know the importance of procedures? Checking documents when you enter the door is proper procedure, so don't ask someone else to check after you enter the door. Wasn't it because of procedures that General Hua was stopped by our Major General Hua earlier? You even deliberately showed the procedures you went through. Have you forgotten about the pass and authorization letter you obtained? Bai Yueran began to show her expertise as the director of the Judicial Department of the Special Operations Forces. Hua Xiaoheng stood calmly to the side with his hands behind his back. He didn't interrupt the two women's verbal battle, but he didn't have any intention of leaving either. Kai Xingnan was stunned by Bai Yueran's words, but she quickly found an opening and sneered. Procedures? You ignored the authorization letter and pass generated by the procedures and left us outside the door without saying a word. Now you're actually talking to me about procedures? Haha, Miss Kai, be reasonable. You can't be talking to us about procedures when we're talking to you about the law. When we're talking to you about procedures, you're telling us that you're wronged. In the end, you're the one in the right, so where are we supposed to go? Bai Yueran retorted in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Even Gu Nianji, who was watching from afar, secretly applauded. Kai Xingnan narrowed her eyes. This Bai Yueran was more capable than her investigations had revealed. Although the debate at the International Court of Justice in The Hague had been exciting, Kai Xingnan had thought that she could do it. However, when she confronted her today, she actually couldn't gain the upper hand at all. It seemed like she would have to re-evaluate the quality of the Wuxia Empire's legal personnel. I'm not talking to you about being wronged. Kai Xingnan shook the pass and authorization letter in her hand. I'm just very surprised. Logically speaking, the Senate's order should be the highest authority, right? I didn't expect you to be able to refute it. Maybe it's because I've just returned and haven't adapted to your way of working yet. Our Wuxia Empire has long been in line with international standards, and in some aspects, we're even more advanced than other countries. Bai Yueran returned to the topic, hinting that Kai Xingnan was being unreasonable and that adapting to the way of working was completely different. Is that so? Since we're already in line, and the Senate's authority is also supreme, then why can your Major General Hua reject my authorization letter from the Senate? Kai Xingnan caught the loophole in Bai Yueran's words and began to retaliate without hesitation. Look, isn't this the Senate's seal on it? Also, are you an organization that was established with the Senate's authorization? You dare to disobey the Senate's orders? No wonder people say that you're too big to get rid of, and that you're forming a small faction. Kai Xingnan began to be aggressive. If the country is compared to a large company, then do you know what you're doing? You're blatantly disobeying the orders of your superiors, and the Senate can directly fire you. Because of the special nature of the Special Operations Forces, there had been many people who were dissatisfied with it from the first day it was established. It was only because of the strong protection of Speaker Long and General Ji, two heavyweights, that they had been able to get to where they were today and reach their current scale. Hua Xiaoheng wasn't the kind of soldier who only cared about carrying out his own mission. He also had a full understanding of the complexity and uniqueness of politics. From Kai Xingnan's words, Hua Xiaoheng acutely sensed that someone was beginning to covet the fat meat of the Special Operations Forces again and wanted a piece of it. At this time, if he offended Kai Xingnan too much, he didn't know what the consequences would be. However, if he gave in now, the consequences would probably be even more serious. Bai Yueran was also momentarily intimidated by Kai Xingnan. The power of the Senate was indeed supreme according to the Constitution, and the Senate was also the body that the Special Operations Forces had to report to. Back then, Hua Xiaoheng had given a speech in the Senate to obtain special permission to expand the scope of the Special Operations Forces authority. To put it bluntly, if the Senate decided to take back the authorization, what could the Special Operations Forces do? Bai Yueran and Hua Xiaoheng were silent for a moment. In the square in front of the office building of the Special Operations Forces headquarters, the cold wind blew. It was so empty that it made people panic. They only saw an RV parked there. Although there were quite a few people in the RV, no one dared to speak loudly. Seeing that she had finally shut their mouths, Kai Xingnan felt very happy. She planned to continue and take down Hua Xiaoheng and Bai Yueran in one fell swoop. If she could get involved in the Special Operations Forces, her future in the Wuxia Empire would be limitless. She had been in the United States for many years. Although she had already become a partner of the second-largest law firm, the feeling of being an outsider was still very obvious, and it often made her feel very uncomfortable. Therefore, she didn't want to become a naturalized citizen like her father. She still wanted to return to her own country, make a name for herself in her own territory, and enjoy the glory of being above everyone else. How is it, Major General Hua? Director Bai? Can I go in now? Kai Xingnan puffed out her chest and took a step forward. Gu Nianji, who was watching from afar, was anxious. She couldn't let this woman go any further, could she? If she really let her in today, where would Major General Hua put his face in the future? For a commander, the consequences of losing his prestige were very serious. However, Kai Xingnan's words did make sense. Didn't she see that even Bai Yueran didn't say anything? That's right, holding the authorization from the Senate was indeed unusual for people like Bai Yueran and Hua Xiaoheng who were in the system. However, Kai Xingnan's words just now were too much. This was a clear slap in Hua Xiaoheng's face. Gu Nianji would never allow anyone to slap Hua Xiaoheng's face in front of her. Her mind was racing and she heard Kai Xingnan say, "Disobeying your superior's orders, the Senate can directly fire you." Bingo! Gu Nianji suddenly thought of a topic that could directly rebuke Kai Xingnan back to her grandmother's house. She quickly picked up her phone and said to Yin Shixiang, "Brother Xiong, get me Hua Xiao right now." Yin Shixiang stood behind Hua Xiaoheng and was also extremely sullen. When he heard Gu Nianji's words, he thought about how she specialized in attacking B*cheese in the law. His eyes lit up and without hesitation he connected her to Hua Xiaoheng's phone. Hua Xiaoheng wore a Bluetooth headset and had been in contact with Zhao Liangzi. Yin Shixiang cut in and connected Gu Nianji's phone. Gu Nianji's crisp voice immediately sounded from Hua Xiaoheng's Bluetooth headset. "Hua Xiaoheng, tell her that the Senate can't even oust Prime Minister Tan, who was impeached by the grand jury, so she shouldn't talk nonsense and think that she can casually fire people." Hua Xiaoheng couldn't help but laugh. How mischievous, she could also think of this point of view. Gu Nianji's words immediately inspired Hua Xiaoheng. He no longer had to worry about offending the Senate and that they would withdraw their authorization to the Special Operations Forces. Hua Xiaoheng said without hesitation, "Madam Kai, since the Senate has such great power, why can't they even oust Prime Minister Tan, who was impeached by the grand jury?" When Kai Xingnan heard this, her face darkened. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood. This was a standard example of using her spear to attack her shield. She had just said that the Senate's power was supreme and that they could almost do whatever they wanted. But Hua Xiaoheng immediately mentioned that the impeachment case of Prime Minister Tan initiated by the Senate had directly failed under her manipulation. If she insisted that the Senate had supreme power and the Special Operations Forces had to obey unconditionally, then how could she explain that the Senate couldn't impeach Prime Minister Tan and step down? After all, the government also had to be authorized by the Senate to form a cabinet. In essence, it was the same organization as the Special Operations Forces. The other party was obviously pointing out to her that the Senate's power wasn't supreme, but that there were checks and balances and weaknesses. What could she say now so that she wouldn't be slapped in the face? This was the first 3,800-word chapter. It was a big chapter. After discussing with everyone, today's plot was more suitable for the big chapter. Therefore, today's additional 3,300 monthly votes were added to the big chapter. Although it was 2 chapters, the word count wouldn't be less than 3 chapters. The second big chapter at 7 p.m. included the additional 3,300 monthly votes. Come, hurry up and cast your monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 903. The expression on Kai Xingnan's face was very conflicted. It was as if she had experienced happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy in an instant. It was the first time in her life that she was rendered speechless by someone. This was a very novel experience for Kai Xingnan, who had been a straight-A student since she was young and had become a straight-A student even after she went to the United States. She frowned and thought quickly, but realized that she couldn't immediately think of a response. It wasn't that she couldn't say a word, but she always felt that there were loopholes in everything. As soon as she said it, she would immediately be rebutted. She could only blame herself for being too careless. Prime Minister Tan was her uncle, so she didn't need to spend any effort to win him over. Helping him settle the impeachment was enough. Her goal was the Senate. However, the impeachment she settled was a slap in the Senate's face. Only Speaker Long, who was broad-minded and didn't stick to one style of talent, would praise her and be willing to let her be his personal legal advisor. So since she wanted to have a foot in both camps, it seemed like she had to endure Hua Xiaoheng's humiliation. Using the spear to attack the shield was too good at exploiting loopholes. She had lost. Kai Xingnan wasn't a sore loser. This time she had come with the intention of testing the waters, and taking a good look at what the most mysterious place in the Huaxia Empire was like. However, on this trip she didn't see anything other than the plaza and alleyways that led in all directions. She didn't even step into the door of the office building. However, although she couldn't enter the building just looking at the environment outside, it didn't seem any different from a regular military compound. However, the people here really gave her the biggest surprise. That Major General Hua's reaction was too fast. It completely overturned her view of soldiers. She couldn't help but look at him in a different light. This kind of favor was also very rare for Kai Xingnan. She even felt her heart palpitate with excitement as if she had met her match. It had been a long time since she had met a man who could make her submit and even surrender. Kai Xingnan was born in the Wuxia Empire and grew up with her grandparents. After going to university, she went to the United States to stay with her parents. Because she grew up in the Wuxia Empire, she had a very good relationship with her youngest aunt, Kai Songyin, and treated her like half a mother. This was also one of the reasons she was willing to return to the Wuxia Empire to help her youngest aunt. Standing here, she seemed to be able to see her future. Kai Xingnan finally regained her composure. She smiled and nodded at Huo Xiaoheng and Bai Yueran. She extended her hand to Huo Xiaoheng. "All right, you win. Major General Hua, I didn't expect you to be so quick-witted and clear. You're as smart as the best lawyers in the world. Thank you for letting me see the best side of you." Huo Xiaoheng had no intention of shaking hands with her. He nodded slightly. "You flatter me, Miss Kai. I still have something to do, so I won't keep you company." With that, he turned around and left, leaving Kai Xingnan with a cool back view. Bai Yueran looked at Kai Xingnan, who was staring at Huo Xiaoheng's back, and smiled. "Miss Kai, please go back." Kai Xingnan came back to her senses and turned her hand to Bai Yueran. "Director Bai, you're amazing too." Bai Yueran shook hands with her nonchalantly and said with a smile. "Not as good as Major General Hua, right? That's how it should be. That's why he's the boss here and I'm just a director." Ever since the leak at Dou Qingyan's birthday, Huo Xiaoheng's identity had been exposed to the world. Later, the military simply promoted him and allowed the Special Operations Forces to surface. It became a place that looked like any other military organization. That way there would be fewer prying eyes. The people who really needed to be hidden were the field personnel of this organization. Someone with Huo Xiaoheng's status naturally wouldn't go on field duty anymore. Huo Xiaoheng had already disguised himself when he made the deal with the big shots to go to the United States to rescue Tang Guiran. Even acquaintances couldn't tell that he was Huo Xiaoheng. Therefore these people were no longer strangers to him. Kai Xingnan stopped being arrogant and turned back to the military art troops RV. She said to the team leader dryly, "Let's go back." The team leader had been itching to leave this place for a long time, so he quickly asked the driver to drive away. Kai Xingnan sat next to Tang Guiran and narrowed her eyes at Tang Guiran. Tang Guiran asked quietly, "Cousin, what were you talking about with Major General Hua and Director Bai?" "Nothing much, just some work-related stuff." Kai Xingnan looked at Tang Guiran's innocent expression and felt a little stifled. She took out a lady's cigarette from her bag and wanted to smoke it, but then remembered that she couldn't smoke in the car. She twisted the cigarette with one hand until it almost turned into smoke. "Cousin, what's wrong? Is something bothering you?" Tang Guiran asked curiously. She couldn't understand why her omnipotent cousin would have such a melancholy expression. Kai Xingnan sighed deeply. Only a poem echoed in her mind. "When I first met you, it was like returning an old friend." She rolled the cigarette into a ball and held it in her hand. She smiled faintly. "It's nothing." As she spoke, she asked Huo Xiaoheng, "Cousin, are you very close to Major General Hua? Uncle and Auntie really think highly of him?" Tan Guiran blushed slightly as she recalled how Huo Xiaoheng had done his best to save her in America. Just thinking about it made her feel sweet. Although Huo Xiaoheng's mother was harsh with her, if Huo Xiaoheng had her in his heart, she would be with him no matter what. She would also try her best to please Huo Xiaoheng's mother and be filial to her. She would never make things difficult for her. Unfortunately, she couldn't read his mind. This man was a difficult question for her, but she still wanted to try her best to solve it. What if she was right? Tan Guiran reminisced and once again talked about how she was rescued by Huo Xiaoheng in the United States. Kai Xingnan listened quietly and didn't comment. Kai Xingnan finally said to Tang Guiran, "I don't think Major General Hua is a good match for you. You're more suited for a simpler man and family. Major General Hua is too complicated for you. You won't be able to control a man like that." Tan Guiran actually agreed with Kai Xingnan's words, but it just felt awkward no matter how she heard it. She couldn't figure out why she felt awkward. It was clearly a very sincere suggestion. Perhaps good advice was unpleasant to the ear. Tan Guiran comforted herself. "Cousin, I already said that I'll listen to Mom and Dad on this." Tan Guiran rejected Kai Xingnan's suggestion tactfully. Kai Xingnan didn't know why, but her mood immediately sank. She forced a smile. Okay, you've always been the most obedient. Kai Xingnan got her car and drove away in a daze. After the military performing team left, the people from Hua Guanshan's political department had already checked their passes at the entrance of the military base and let them in one by one. They were the official organization that came for the annual inspection. Hua Xiaoheng could refuse the military performing team and Kai Xingnan, but he couldn't refuse the surprise inspection this time. Of course, he didn't want to interact with Hua Guanshan personally, so he used the excuse of avoiding suspicion to have Yin Shixiang stay behind to handle the surprise inspection. Hua Xiaoheng drove out alone and called Gu Nianji. Nianji, are you still at Qinlai's? Gu Nianji nodded. I just had some snacks with Brother Qin. What's up, Hua Xiao? Her tone was calm and didn't sound proud or happy at all. Hua Xiaoheng suddenly realized that he really missed the Gu Nianji who would laugh when she was happy, cry when she was unhappy, and want to tell the world when she was happy. But people always grow up. Now that Gu Nianji had really grown up and matured as he wished, he felt a bit sad. Fingers tapping on the steering wheel, he finally took out the keys and got out of the car to go upstairs to Qinlai's office. When he walked into Qinlai's office, Gu Nianji was helping him clean up the coffee cups and porcelain plates on the coffee table. Seeing Hua Xiaoheng walk in, Gu Nianji looked up with a smile. Have you had lunch? Do you want something to eat? Hua Xiaoheng wasn't hungry at all. Stretching his long legs, he sat down on the sofa and shook his head. No need. How's your checkup? It's still the same. Gu Nianji sat across from him. Brother Qin said I might not have that illness. She sighed deeply and seemed to be in disbelief. What's wrong? Why aren't you happy that you're not sick? Hua Xiaoheng leaned over and rubbed her head. Don't think too much. Trust Qinlai. Gu Nianji avoided his hand. Okay, I'll trust him for now. She then asked, who is that Madame Kai? How did she get everything all of a sudden? She had a pass, a letter of authorization from the Senate, and she had connections with the military art troupe in Hua Guanshan. Hua Xiaoheng told her about Kai Xingnan's identity and situation, then said, she's been back in the country for more than a month. She's the lead lawyer for Prime Minister Tan's impeachment case, so it should be settled by now. They had already analyzed this problem last time. But this time they saw the person behind the other party. So it's her? She's quite impressive. I didn't expect her to be so young. Gu Nianji evaluated objectively. Actually, if it weren't for the fact that she wanted to help the Prime Minister and curry favor with Speaker Long, I wouldn't have said that to her. Hua Xiaoheng smiled. What you said today was very appropriate and it helped me a lot. I haven't thanked you properly yet. Oh, Hua Xiao, you don't have to be so polite. You sending me back to school is the best way to show your gratitude. Gu Nianji quickly waved her hand, afraid that Hua Xiaoheng would thank her properly again. When she came to Qinlai for a checkup last week, Hua Xiaoheng was also there. She only helped him translate a document, and Hua Xiaoheng said he wanted to thank her properly. He took her back to the official residence and expressed his gratitude from head to toe, inside and out. The direct result was that Gu Nianji lay in his bed from Saturday to Sunday. Her bones were about to fall apart. So when Hua Xiaoheng said, I haven't thanked you properly, Gu Nianji quickly declined. Hua Xiaoheng seemed to also remember last weekend. He lowered his head and smiled for a while before standing up. Let's go. I'll take you back. The two of them chatted and laughed in the car along the way, and the atmosphere became much more harmonious. When they arrived at school, Gu Nianji was about to get out of the car. Hua Xiaoheng kissed her cheek before letting her go. Gu Nianji returned to her dorm and had just tidied up her desk when she saw He Jichu call. Nianji, it's Christmas next weekend. What plans do you have? Gu Nianji, Professor He, I want to study. My thesis is almost finished. I want to revise it properly in the next few days. He Jichu agreed. Ask me if you have any questions. Gu Nianji originally wanted to say that there was no problem, but she suddenly remembered seeing Kai Xingnan today. She asked, Professor He, do you know Kai Xingnan? She's a Chinese-American female partner of the second-largest law firm in the United States. Do you remember her? He Jichu replied calmly, I'm not very familiar with that law firm. He then asked, why are you asking about her? If you need me to, I can help you look into it. Gu Nianji bit the tip of her pen and thought about it for a while. In the end, she decided to put it aside for now. After all, she still didn't understand what this woman's intentions were. She didn't want to alert them and she didn't want to give them face by paying attention to them. Putting down the phone, He Jichu looked at the calendar in front of him. On his desk was a large red gilded invitation. It was the invitation to the military performing troops' Christmas performance. This kind of high-class performance ticket couldn't be bought with money. The Special Operations Forces surprise inspection ended very quickly. Guanchen originally thought it would take 10 days to half a month, but the results were many times better than he had expected. When he left with the people from the General Political Department's Secretariat, Hua Xiaoheng still personally came to see him off. When Hua Guanchen got into the car, he looked at him a few times. He wanted to say something to him but stopped himself. In the end, he didn't say anything. On Thursday night, Ma Qiqi rushed back to the dormitory and said to Gu Nianji, "Nianji, today is the live broadcast of the impeachment in the Senate. Do you want to watch it together?" Gu Nianji already knew the outcome, so of course she wasn't interested. However, seeing that Ma Qiqi seemed to care, Gu Nianji also watched the television with her. The television first showed the vote in the lower house of the Senate. According to the law, the impeachment would only take effect if more than 50% of the members of the upper house and the lower house of the Senate agreed. What Kai Xingnan was doing was making breakthroughs in both the upper and lower houses of the Senate to fight for as much power as possible. Today it was time to see who was the real deal. Gu Nianji picked up an apple and nibbled on it. She stared at the television intently and said, "Why don't we guess the percentage of the votes? I'll give you 2 points, okay?" Ma Qiqi glared at her. "You said the same thing last week and in the end you took all my pocket money. That's because you were careless." Gu Nianji leaned lazily on the sofa. "Come on, maybe you can beat me? If you can't, you won't lose anything." Ma Qiqi was a bit tempted by her words, but she looked at the complicated numbers and calculation formulas. She was just a normal person, so she shouldn't use the standards of a top student to demand of herself. The television finally turned to the voting hall of the lower house of the Senate. A balding old man in his 50s sat in the voting hall of the lower house of the Senate. He smiled at everyone and raised his hand. "Now is the time to vote on the impeachment of Prime Minister Tan Dongbang. Dear members of the Senate, I want to remind you that whether Prime Minister Tan Dongbang's crimes of perjury and obstruction of justice will all depend on your votes." This was the second installment of 4,000 words. It included the 3,300 monthly votes. Come, hurry up and cast your monthly and recommendation votes. Chapter 904. Tan Dongbang's impeachment started because of the video he and Gu Yanran had an affair in. However, to the Prime Minister, being unfaithful to his wife was at most a moral issue. His wife was the one who should be angry, and the Senate wouldn't go so far as to impeach him for having an affair with someone else. However, after the original video was recovered, more details were revealed. Everyone discovered that Tan Dongbang and Gu Yanran had an affair in the Prime Minister's office. Previously, when the Senate questioned Tan Dongbang about the affair, Tan Dongbang claimed that his affair with Gu Yanran didn't affect his work at all, and that he had never brought Gu Yanran to his office. When the social network was attacked by a hacker, and was forced to restore the previous backup, the deleted short movie reappeared. It was restored by the technical department and revealed all the details. Everyone was shocked to discover that the affair in the video happened in the Prime Minister's office. Therefore, lying to the Senate and perjury immediately became Tan Dongbang's first charge. What followed was all sorts of obstruction and misleading of the Senate's investigation team. Therefore, the second charge of obstructing justice was also brought by the grand jury. As for Tan Dongbang and Gu Yanran's affair, it still couldn't be brought to light, so it wasn't officially charged by the grand jury. After more than a month of investigation, evidence collection and debate, the Senate would officially begin voting today. According to the Wuxia Empire's constitution, impeaching a prime minister required 2/3 of both the Senate's votes to succeed. This was also the first prime minister to be impeached by the Senate since the Wuxia Empire's constitution was established. The entire nation was paying attention to this impeachment case. All major television stations, news media, and online social media were all broadcasting the instant vote in both houses of the Senate. The entire world's eyes were also focused on the Wuxia Imperial Senate's conference hall. At the same time, Tan Dongbang, Kai Songyin, Tan Guirin, and Kai Xingnan were doing the final preparations in the small conference room next to the lower house of the Senate's conference hall. Kai Xingnan's father called from the United States to give Tan Dongbang one last live coaching session. He taught him how to speak without breaking the law and also exonerate himself. The two of them chatted noisily on the phone and the conversation was in full swing. Kai Songyin didn't disturb them and quietly asked Kai Xingnan, "Xingnan, tell Auntie the truth. Will it really be okay this time?" Kai Xingnan waved her hand disapprovingly. "What are you worried about? My dad can even handle the US Senate and House of Representatives." "What's this?" You can't say that. Kai Songin's mind was in a mess, and there was a trace of unwillingness. This place is still different from the United States. But looking at her innocent daughter, Tan Guirin, and thinking about her future prospects in marriage, Kai Songyin had no choice but to swallow this bitterness. If Tan Dongbang was really impeached, his daughter's life would be ruined. She could have been a little princess for the rest of her life. No one in the entire Wuxia Empire had a higher birth than her, and no one deserved a better husband and a better marriage than her. Even if it was for her daughter, she could only choose this path. Furthermore, was there anyone more suitable for her than Tan Dongbang in the entire country? No. Gold had no legs and no one was perfect. She should be content. Anyway, she could play outside in the future, so she didn't have to worry about Tan Dongbang's feelings. Kai Songyin laughed coldly in her heart as she gently held her daughter's hand. Kai Xingnan crossed her arms and paced back and forth in the small conference room. It wasn't that she wasn't nervous. After all, it was her first time doing something like this in the Wuxia Empire. Although everything had been arranged properly, no one knew what would happen until the final vote was announced. She raised her slender neck and took a deep breath. It was as if she was trying to convince herself, but it was also as if she was trying to explain to Kai Songyin. There are 660 people in the lower house of the Senate. So far, we've already convinced 450 people to vote against. The other 20 people are undecided. That's more than 2/3 of them. There are 100 people in the upper house and 70 people have already agreed to vote against. So as long as they understand the situation, there shouldn't be a problem. Will anyone betray us? Kai Songyin asked worriedly. How did you convince them? You didn't break the law, did you? How? Kai Xingnan looked up at Kai Songyin with her mesmerizing eyes. Of course I used the votes they care about the most. Why would I do anything illegal? Wouldn't I be waiting for them to send me to jail if I did something illegal to a senator? Am I that stupid? She had used open and above-board legal means. Senators cared about votes the most. Kai Xingnan used a strategy that could influence the senators' votes to convince them that Tan Dongbang's governing platform would be beneficial to the districts of the senators. If Tan Dongbang was impeached, the voters in the districts of the senators would lose the most direct benefit. Also, Tan Dongbang was representing the interests of the voters. The media controlled by Kai Songyin had already turned the entire impeachment case into a battle between political factions. They even whitewashed the short film into saying that it was his opponent who uploaded it using the IP address of the office of the Prime Minister. The goal was to attack Tan Dongbang's political advantage and smear his political reputation. With Kai Songyin's media water army controlling the situation, many political forces that wanted to take advantage of the situation could only give up. If they moved, they would be dragged out and beaten up. The hot topic was shifted and everyone's focus was off. It had to be said that Kai Songyin understood the psychology of the audience very well. She knew very well that to the audience, the political battle of the upper class would always be more convincing than the news of the Prime Minister's affair. It would also make them believe that this was the truth. Even if the Prime Minister really had an affair, his wife didn't care and tried her best to defend her husband. Who would care if he really had an affair? Was it really not the Prime Minister's political opponent who made such a big fuss? Under this kind of public opinion, Tan Dongbang's impeachment case didn't cause too many problems. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner under Kai Songyin and Kai Xingnan's control. Today was the day to test the results of their work. On the other side, Tan Dongbang ended the long-distance call with his brother-in-law and felt much calmer. He adjusted the little bow tie on his black tuxedo in front of the mirror. Kai Songyin looked at him from behind. The man in the mirror with smooth hair and a handsome face was her childhood sweetheart husband. Of course, this man was capable. He was best at giving speeches. That kind of incitement wasn't something an ordinary person could do. That was why he was able to stand out under the Tan and Kai family's schemes. He suddenly rose to prominence and left by Jianqing, who had been far ahead. Kai Songyin brushed the non-existent dust off his back and gently pushed him. Go. Tan Dongbang turned around to hold her hand and kissed it. Songyin, wait for me. He turned around and walked towards the door. Kai Xingnan said, Auntie cousin, you should go together. You should always stand by uncle's side and show your most determined support. We have to go too? Kai Songyin and Tan Guirin asked in surprise. Kai Songyin felt uncomfortable while Tan Guirin felt embarrassed. Yes, what uncle needs the most right now is your support. Auntie, you standing by uncle's side is the best way to guide the public opinion online. The netizens will only look at your attitude. And cousin. Kai Xingnan's gaze lingered on Tan Guirin's flawless face for a while. She noticed that Tan Guirin was also wearing a white Chloe dress suit today. It matched her temperament very well. She had a naive and innocent air about her that made people want to love her. It was very attractive to otakus. In fact, many otakus on the internet had already expressed that they would support Tan Dongbang to the end just by looking at his daughter, Tan Guirin, the goddess of otakus. They even shouted the slogan, "Beauty is justice." Of course, only Kai Songyin herself knew how much of this was caused by her own water army and media. You have to know that netizens are voters. Their influence on the members of the Senate is decisive. Kai Xingnan persuaded Kai Songyin and Tan Guirin for a long time before they were finally convinced. The voting had just begun in the Senate's conference hall. Tan Dongbang stood solemnly in the defendant's seat across from the grand jury. Beside him was his lead lawyer, Kai Xingnan. Behind him was his team of lawyers. Kai Xingnan was wearing a custom-made Louis Vuitton black women's suit today. It was both dignified and dignified, but it also highlighted her feminine features and magnified them. When Kai Xingnan's footage appeared on TV and was intentionally praised, Kai Xingnan's name also began to circulate online. Hashtag Kai Xingnan, the only Asian female partner of the second-largest law firm in the United States. Hashtag Kai Xingnan's father, the lead lawyer of the former president of the United States. Hashtag Kai Xingnan, a graduate of a prestigious American school, giving a graduation speech on behalf of the entire grade. Topics flew up one by one on the top searches. Soon, 3 of the top 10 searches were related to Kai Xingnan. She was famous. She was really famous. Many media outlets noticed this talented and good-looking lawyer who had just returned from the United States from a prestigious family. Her work phone was almost exploding with calls, inviting her to do an exclusive interview. Kai Xingnan was observing the voting in the conference room of the Senate's lower house. Of course, she didn't have time to answer the phone. It was her assistant who was handling her work calls now. Her assistant happily reported to her about the situation on social media. "Lawyer Kai, you can really make your debut now. Your trending is comparable to that of an A-list celebrity. Those B-list and C-list celebrities don't even deserve to carry your shoes." Kai Xingnan smiled slightly and was very calm. She put on her Bluetooth headset and said softly, "All right, keep it to yourself. I'm not in the entertainment industry. Are you using them to compare to me?" She had woken up early in the morning and only slept 4 to 5 hours a day to get where she was today. But even so, everyone had vanity. Kai Xingnan still took the time to take out her personal phone and quickly glanced at the top 10 of the hot searches. At that moment, a new trending search rose like a rocket. It quickly reached the 10th place and continued to move forward. This new trending search related to Kai Xingnan was like this. Hashtag Kai Xingnan, Beauty 100, Figure 150, IQ 250, Frozen Age Goddess. Hashtag Kai Xingnan. The corners of her mouth twitched twice and she gradually became angry. Was little Auntie's water army brainless? How did they buy this trending search? Was this a compliment? At that moment, in the dormitory of the female graduate students of the B University Faculty of Law, Gunyanji put down her phone as if nothing had happened. There was a hint of smugness on her lips. She rested her chin on her hands and watched the solemn and magnificent conference hall of the lower house of parliament on the television with Machichi. This was the first update, 3,300 words. The second update at 7 p.m. Come on, hurry up and vote for the monthly and recommendation votes. It should be the third update tomorrow. P.S. Thank you to Xinyuan Yushin for the 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Moi. Chapter 905. Gunyanji had just discovered that the trending searches about Kai Xingnan on social media were all over the place. She could tell at a glance that they had bought the trending searches, and there was a water army leading the way. Gunyanji couldn't stand the sight of Kai Xingnan being so arrogant at the Special Operations Forces headquarters that day and almost humiliating Hu Xiaohan. "Since you like being on the trending searches so much, I'll give you a hand." She quietly hacked a water army account controlled by Kai Songyin's media company and used that account to post a topic. Hashtag Kai Xingnan, Beauty 100, Figure 150, IQ 250, Frozen Age Goddess. Hashtag Then their water army thought it was a mission and didn't look carefully before immediately buying the trending searches. Kai Xingnan watched as the trending search climbed higher and higher. Soon it went from 10th to 8th, then from 8th to 4th. It had already surpassed the previous 3 serious trending searches. She was really annoyed. What kind of topic was this? It was fine if it was 100 points for her looks, but she still had some confidence. Figure 150. Wasn't the extra 50 referring to her weight? Kai Xingnan had lived in the United States for many years and was used to the strong and beautiful Americans. She worked out very frequently and had slightly bulging muscles. She didn't feel it when she was in the United States, but when she returned to the country she realized that she was about 1 or 2 sizes bigger than the beauties in the country. Okay, let's put weight aside for now. Maybe she was thinking too much. But that IQ of 250 was definitely an insult to her. The person with the highest IQ in the world was Einstein with an IQ of 278. Generally, people with an IQ of 140 or above were geniuses. She had once tested her IQ. It was 180, which was usually rounded up to 200. So when she saw the IQ of 250, she immediately realized that it was definitely not a compliment. And that frozen age goddess was usually used to describe women over 40 years old. That was a genuine compliment. But she was only 29 years old. Did she have to be praised as frozen age? The two most taboo things for women were weight and age. For Kai Xingnan there was also IQ. These three taboos were perfectly violated by this trending search. She really didn't know which genius in her aunt's company came up with this trending search. Every sentence hit her sore spot. If she didn't get fired, was she supposed to keep it for Christmas? Kai Xingnan was angry, but she still remembered that she was on live television, so she didn't show it on her face at all. She still smiled generously and steadily, and her eyes looked around the council hall, waiting for the results of the vote. Kai Songyin and Tan Guoren walked in and stood on either side of Tan Dongbang. Tan Dongbang immediately looked relieved and touched. He hugged Tan Guoren first, then held Kai Songyin's hand and raised it up to the camera. It was also a greeting to the audience. As expected, seeing that Tan Dongbang's wife and daughter had come out to support him, the public opinion on the internet shifted even more towards his side. The trending topic about Kai Xingnan was also spreading rapidly on the internet. However, the most popular one right now was hashtag Kai Xingnan, the goddess of frozen age with looks 100, figure 150, and IQ 250. Netizens who liked to make fun of people found a lot of fun from it, and all kinds of emoji packages were developed. Kai Xingnan occasionally looked at her phone, and she was so angry at the spectacular teasing comments on the internet that she was about to vomit blood. Her image of being generous, steady, knowledgeable and professional, that she had painstakingly built up was completely destroyed by this superfluous trending topic. When people saw Kai Xingnan's name again, their first impression wasn't how outstanding she was, but how funny she was. Fortunately, the vote in the Senate could still help her regain some of her reputation. She comforted herself this way. 2 hours later, the voting finally ended and the votes were counted. Because it was an electronic vote, the votes were counted almost instantly. The results came out not long after the voting ended. I will now announce the results of the voting. The Speaker of the lower house of the Senate read out the results. There are a total of 660 members in the lower house of the Senate. 630 were present and 30 requested leave. There were 600 votes and 30 abstained. The actual votes were 600, and 350 of them supported the impeachment of Prime Minister Tan Dongbang. Kai Xingnan's heart sank. How could there be so much support? She had clearly calculated that 2/3 of the people would vote against the impeachment. However, although the number of people voting in favor exceeded her expectations and was more than half, according to the rules 2/3 of the votes were needed to pass the impeachment, so she still won this round. The support for the impeachment did not exceed 2/3, and the impeachment was defeated in the lower house of the Senate. The votes in the upper house of the Senate were also counted. Speaker Long's figure appeared on the large screen in the lower house of the Senate's conference hall. He was reading the results of the upper house's voting. The results of the upper house of the Senate are as follows. 100 members of the upper house of the Senate were present, and 100 votes were cast. Among them, 60 supported the impeachment of Prime Minister Tan Dongbang, which is more than half, but less than 2/3. Therefore, the impeachment was not passed in the upper house. Speaker Long banged his gavel and officially announced that the impeachment of Prime Minister Tan Dongbang had not been passed in both houses of the Senate. Tan Dongbang would continue as Prime Minister until his term expired. That's great. We won. Tan Dongbang hugged Kai Songyin excitedly and said happily, "Songyin, thank you. Thank you." Kai Songyin hugged him back excitedly, playing the role of a perfect wife. Tan Guoren was the only one who was truly happy for her father. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her expression was sincere and focused. Her white dress fluttered in the wind as she continuously bowed to the members of parliament in the hall. She thanked each and every one of them regardless of whether they had voted for or against. Soon, videos of her continuously bowing were also uploaded to social media. The comments below were neatly written by otakus, and rows of "My heart aches for my goddess." Gu Nianji and Ma Qiqi sat in the dorm watching TV and were not at all surprised by the results. Ma Qiqi even yelled twice to express her anger. Gu Nianji was completely unmoved. She peeled an orange in her hand and didn't even look up as she said, "This was decided a long time ago. To be honest, I was quite surprised to see that more than half of the votes in favor of impeachment were cast today. Although it was not more than 2/3 of the required number, it was still much better than less than half. More than half meant that most of the members of parliament were dissatisfied with him. This would affect the approval rate of his future policies. 2/3 of the votes were needed to pass the impeachment, but policies could be passed or rejected with only half of the votes. It was easy to imagine that Tan Dongbang's next 5 years as prime minister would not be easy. Ma Qiqi hugged her little pillow and sighed deeply as she leaned back on the sofa. This Kai Xingnan is quite capable. She had managed to settle the 700+ members of the upper and lower houses of parliament in 1 month. She was indeed very efficient. Gu Nianji also admired Kai Xingnan, but because of what happened that day she didn't want to admit it. She snorted lightly and didn't comment. Ma Qiqi flipped over on the sofa and propped her head up with her hand. She asked Gu Nianji curiously, "I remember that Prime Minister Tan still owes you money, right? Is he coming back?" She was a little excited just thinking about living in the same dorm as the Prime Minister's creditor. This was referring to Gu Yanran's illegal gift to Prime Minister Tan. Tan Dongbang and his wife Kai Songyin were suspected of illegally embezzling campaign funds. Later, it was Gu Yanran who used the money to pay off the embezzled campaign funds that allowed Tan Dongbang to get out of the case. Recently, Gu Nianji and Gu Yanran were involved in an estate dispute. Gu Yanran was suspected of murdering Gu Nianji and illegally embezzling the Gu assets. The court had already stripped Gu Yanran of her inheritance rights to the Gu assets. After the case was over, Gu Nianji asked He Zhichu to send a lawyer's letter to Tan Dongbang and Kai Songyin to recover the $30 million that Gu Yanran had illegally given to them. Tan Dongbang and Kai Songyin were doing their best to deal with the impeachment case. Of course, they didn't want to complicate matters and fight another lawsuit against Gu Nianji for the illegal gift. Therefore, without another word, they sold all their properties and investments and borrowed another $10 million from their family. They gathered $30 million and returned it to Gu Xiangwen's estate fund. Because Gu Xiangwen was now treated as a missing person, it had already been 7 years. The court announced to the world that he was legally dead. The announcement period was 6 months. Within 6 months, Gu Nianji could only receive all of Gu Xiangwen's estate if no one raised any objections. At the moment she was still the same person. She didn't immediately become the new richest woman in Barbados. Although she won the lawsuit, not a single cent of the money went into her pocket. It was still in Gu Xiangwen's estate fund. Gu Nianji shrugged. "The money was returned to my father's estate fund." Ma Qiqi nodded. "That's good. Otherwise we definitely won't let them off." "Okay, if they don't return it, we'll close the door and let Qiqi go." Gu Nianji smiled as she gave the peeled orange to Ma Qiqi. Ma Qiqi only realized after taking a bite that Gu Nianji was indirectly calling her a dog. She couldn't help throwing away the orange in her hand and pouncing on Gu Nianji while barking. The two of them laughed and joked around in the dormitory. They were very happy. When the vote for Tan Dongbang's impeachment case was being held, the military Supreme Council was also watching the live broadcast. Hua Xiaoheng sat next to General Ji. His expression was calm and composed. Of course, everyone in the meeting room was a sly old fox. Everyone had a normal expression on their faces. Those who were always smiling were still smiling, and those who were always serious were still serious. No one revealed any special emotions. When the results came out, everyone laughed and praised Tan Dongbang's top lawyer, Kai Xingnan, in unison. "This lawyer Kai is really not bad. There were so many people in the Senate, but she managed to settle them all within a month." Yes, it was not easy to control the number of votes in favor to below 2/3. For old Tan to be able to pass this time, he has to thank his wife and his niece. That's right. At the end of the day his wife is still the best. Who's his mistress again? Gu Yanran is Gu Nianji's older sister. When someone said this they looked at Hua Xiaoheng meaningfully. Everyone knew that Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji had a special relationship. Previously, Hua Xiaoheng had used the opportunity to go to the United States to save Tan Guiran to negotiate with them and force them to approve Gu Nianji's background check and his marriage report. Now someone remembered and asked Hua Xiaoheng, "Xiaoheng, how are you and Nianji? When do you plan to get married?" Hua Xiaoheng shook his head with a smile. "No need. Because they were already married. However, General Ji was the only one there who knew about his marriage. However, they had agreed to keep it a secret for now. Therefore, General Ji was happy to play dumb and not expose Hu Xiaoheng. Hu Guanxin, who was sitting on the other side of the conference room, was overjoyed but still sighed and went along with Hu Xiaoheng's wishes. What a pity. Nianji is also not bad. Although she's not as good as Lawyer Kai, she's still young. Her future is limitless. The few big shots sitting beside him also expressed their regret, but they were actually quite happy. General Ji didn't say anything until everyone left. He only asked Hu Xiaoheng to stay behind and said, I know about your father's surprise inspection at your place a few days ago. Hu Xiaoheng smiled and slowly put the pen and paper on the conference table into his briefcase. The inspection results were all normal. You know about that too, right? Of course. I trust you to handle things. General Ji rubbed his almost bald head and laughed heartily. However, he didn't laugh for long before saying, but that day you really didn't give our art troupe any face. Hu Xiaoheng was speechless. Then what do I have to do to give them face? Hu Xiaoheng shook his head, his expression unchanged. Our department is special. It's also very difficult for us to have them come uninvited. I know that. General Ji smiled and tried to smooth things over. But Xiaoheng, there are no fish when the water is too clear, and there are no disciples when the water is too clear. Your position is getting higher and higher, so you have to do things more and more meticulously. For all kinds of unexpected situations, you can't just chase them away. You can say that the art troupe doesn't have any real power, and indeed it doesn't. But if you say that it has real power, sometimes its power is greater than you and I can imagine. You understand what I mean, right? Of course, Hu Xiaoheng understood what General Ji meant. Civil servants in the military were all like this. He chuckled. I understand. I've troubled you, sir. That's good. General Ji patted his shoulder. This Saturday the art troupe will perform in the auditorium. The military requires all officers above the rank of colonel and above to be present. Go back and tell them that the situation over there is special. Just have Big Xiong and Little Zhe, the two deputy generals, come. General Ji didn't want his secret troops to be in public every day. Hu Xiaoheng, Zhao Liangzi, and Yin Shixiang were already public, so it was fine to show up occasionally. Yes, sir. Hu Xiaoheng saluted without batting an eyelid. He picked up his briefcase and turned to leave. After returning to his office, Hu Xiaoheng called Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi over. General Ji just instructed us to attend the art troupe's performance in the military auditorium this Saturday night. The requirement is for officers above the rank of colonel and above, but our department is special. Only the two of you will be able to go. What do you think? Yin Shixiang's face fell instantly. Hu Xiao, this Saturday is Christmas Eve. I've been planning for a long time to, with Chi-Chi. He really didn't want to go to this art troupe's performance. Zhao Liangzi didn't mind. He rubbed his chin and said, I'm fine with it. Yin Shixiang glared at him and silently cursed him for being so disloyal. Hu Xiaoheng looked down at his schedule and raised his hand. Forget it. I'll go with Little Zhe. Big Xiong, you take the day off. Yin Shixiang was already 27 or 28 years old. As a superior, Hu Xiaoheng had to think about his subordinates' lifelong happiness. This is the second chapter, 4,200 words. It's a big chapter. Come, hurry up and vote for the monthly and recommendation votes. It should be the third chapter tomorrow. Good night, my dears. Chapter 906. Hu Xiaoheng volunteered to take Yin Shixiang's place to attend the performance. Yin Shixiang was a little embarrassed. Hu Xiao, don't you have a program on Christmas Eve? He asked carefully. His normally thick-skinned face was actually blushing. Zhao Liangzi laughed and punched him lightly. All right, Hu Xiao never attends these foreign holidays. You know that, right? What's the point of complaining now? Who was the one who yelled that he was holding up a beautiful night? Yin Shixiang chuckled and moved to the side. He propped his hands on the table and said, Isn't that Chi-Chi? She's been talking about Christmas Eve ever since 800 years ago. She said that her school is very lively on Christmas Eve. The student council and classes also organize all kinds of activities. There's a choir singing hymns on campus. That's the atmosphere. Hu Xiaoheng glanced at him and leaned back in his chair. Big Xiong, although it's important to please your girlfriend, you can't participate in religious activities. Don't make mistakes. Yes, Chief. Yin Shixiang quickly straightened and became serious. I know. I won't break the rules. For people like them, it was fine to eat and sing karaoke on Christmas Eve, but it would be a mistake to actually attend a church. Okay, go. Hu Xiaoheng waved his hand. Hand over the work and review the emergency plan. We're on vacation, but the enemy doesn't care if you're on vacation or not. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi shouted in unison. Yes, Chief. Yin Shixiang and Zhao Liangzi left Hu Xiaoheng's office and went to review their own work. The three of them wouldn't be at the headquarters during the weekend, so the people on duty and responsibilities were even more important. Of course, Hu Xiaoheng's own matters were even more important. He didn't sleep the entire night and went through the work at hand again. He checked the missing parts and filled in the gaps. If there were problems, he sent them to rearrange them. If there were clues, he had to keep an eye on them. There was also the rotation of field personnel, the placement of family members, and the global layout of the Special Operations Forces. He had to be aware of all the big and small things. There were many things that he didn't need to do personally, but as the head of the Special Operations Forces, he had to be responsible for the thousands of field personnel in the Special Operations Forces. They were soldiers. Although they fought on a battlefield without gunpowder, they also used their lives to carry out missions and protect the interests of their country and people. The slightest oversight on his part could cause an avalanche of consequences. He didn't want to bear the consequences, and he didn't want to use other people's lives to pay for his tuition. His work only came to an end when it was almost 10 o'clock on Friday morning. Of course, he couldn't say that he had finished everything, but his current arrangements could last for 10 days to half a month. Standing up from his seat, Hu Xiaoheng returned to his official residence. First, he went to the gym to do an hour of extreme exercise. Sweating profusely, he instantly felt much more refreshed. He then went to the bathroom to take a shower and changed into his casual clothes before sitting down for lunch. This time he had not eaten for almost a day and a half, so he ate a lot. He ate 6 pieces of steak, which was cooked to medium well with special butter. Each piece weighed about half a caddy, but he still wanted more. Then he ate a bowl of rice porridge that was cooked to the point that even the oil was oozing out. It was very nourishing to the stomach. There were also a few stir-fried side dishes on the table. There were green cucumbers stir-fried with bacon and meat, chili fried with chopped eggs, and a vegetarian assortment of black fungus, fresh mushrooms, winter bamboo shoots, and slices of yulon. He cleaned up almost all the dishes on the table. When the orderly came to clean up the dishes, he was shocked to see that the chief had eaten so much by himself. He quietly asked the orderly in the kitchen, "How long has the chief been hungry?" "He probably hasn't eaten since yesterday morning after he went out for breakfast." The orderly in the kitchen looked at the dishes and shook his head with a sigh. He had been with Hu Xiaoheng for a few years and knew his eating habits and routine well. Therefore, the food he prepared was very much to Hu Xiaoheng's liking, both in terms of quality and quantity. "Go ask the chief if he will be eating at the official residence tonight. If he is, I'll make a soup to replenish his vitality right now." "Okay, I'll go ask now." When he went upstairs, the orderly knocked on the door and asked loudly through the intercom, "Chief, will you be eating at the official residence tonight? The kitchen needs to be prepared." Hu Xiaoheng didn't open the door. He only said into the intercom, "I won't be back for dinner tonight. I have something to do this weekend. You guys should rest early and take a break." "Yes, Chief." The voice answered cheerfully. He returned to the kitchen and said to the 3 orderlies who were in charge of cooking, "The chief said he won't be back for dinner tonight and told us to rest early. He also said he'll give us 2 days off. He has something to do this weekend." The 3 orderlies in the kitchen all laughed. "The chief is so considerate. We can go out for a walk this weekend." "Aha, are you going to see your girlfriend?" "What girlfriend? We're an old married couple." The orderlies laughed as they cleaned up the kitchen. The official residence was instantly filled with a festive atmosphere. Hu Xiaoheng dealt with a few more emails in the study of the official residence. It was almost 1 in the afternoon. He then checked Gu Nianji's class schedule. She didn't have any classes this Friday afternoon. Her last class should have finished at 12 in the morning. Hu Xiaoheng casually grabbed his briefcase and put on his Bluetooth headset. He called Gu Nianji as he walked out. Gu Nianji had just finished lunch and came out of the cafeteria to ride her bike. She heard her phone ring. It was Hu Xiaoheng's exclusive ringtone. She put on her headset and answered the call as she rode. "Hu Xiao. Nianji? Have you had lunch?" Hu Xiaoheng opened the door to his Bentley SUV and got in. He started the car. He didn't bring any guards with him. He was going out on private business alone, so he didn't take his hongqi. "I just finished." Gu Nianji was in a good mood. Her long legs kicked off the ground and the bike whizzed off. She held the handlebars with one hand and drew a beautiful arc on the bike path. Her beautiful face was brimming with youthful energy and brightness. Anyone who saw her would be in a good mood. Classmate Gunyenji. A boy with a backpack rode up from behind on a bike. Wait. Although Gunyenji was talking to Hua Xiaoheng through her Bluetooth headset, she could still hear the voices outside. She looked back and took off her Bluetooth headset. She stopped and smiled at the boy who caught up to her. You're from class 1 of the Faculty of Law? He looked familiar, but she didn't remember his name because they had never met before. Gunyenji was a special presence among this year's Master of Law students at B University. She didn't have classes with this year's students. Instead, she had classes with her tutor, Hijichu, and his doctoral students. As for the public elective classes she attended, she mingled with students from all faculties in the school, so she wasn't very familiar with the students of her level. The boy saw that Gunyenji had stopped on her own with a sweet smile and a crisp voice. She wasn't as arrogant and unreasonable as some students said. He felt a little more confident. He asked carefully, "Classmate Gunyenji, tomorrow is the weekend and it's Christmas Eve. The class wants to have a dance party to give the students a chance to socialize. Would you be willing to do us the honor? I know you're not in the same class as us, but we're all in the same year. You don't want to graduate and not even know your classmates' names, do you?" They had originally asked Gunyenji's roommate, Machichi, to inform her, but Machichi said she had an appointment on the weekend and couldn't attend class activities. She also didn't want Gunyenji to feel awkward because of her, so she declined and didn't agree to pass the message for them. The boys thought about it and still wanted to take the initiative to ask Gunyenji. They wouldn't lose anything if they asked. What if Gunyenji agreed to come? Then the dance party for their law faculty class 1 would be a sensation on campus. Gunyenji looked at him with a smile and tilted her head. "I bet you don't know my name." The boy laughed self-deprecatingly. Gunyenji smiled sheepishly and nodded. "Okay, I'll go." "Oh my, that's great." The boy was so happy he actually jumped up and his bike fell to the ground. Gunyenji laughed so hard she bent over and quickly propped her bike to the side to help the boy up his bike. "Tell me the time and place. I should be free on the weekend." She answered quickly. She had been studying very hard recently. In order to graduate early, she only slept 4 to 5 hours a day. She felt like she should reward herself. She hadn't tried a dance party with her peers yet. The boy nodded and gathered his courage again. "Can you tell me your phone number? I'll send the time and place to you." Gunyenji didn't hesitate and gave him her phone number. The boy immediately called. Gunyenji's phone rang. "Okay, we'll send it to you when we confirm the place." The boy waved his phone and beamed. Gunyenji was confused. "You haven't confirmed the place for the dance party today?" The boy shrank back and smiled sheepishly. "It's like this. We're planning on booking a bar outside of campus, but we haven't agreed on the terms yet." "So, oh I see." Gunyenji understood. "Then let me know when you're sure." The boy repeatedly agreed and happily rode away on his bike. Of course he had to go back to report the good news. A few rich boys in their grade had announced that if they could invite Gunyenji to the Christmas dance party, they would pay for the booking. Gunyenji was so focused on her studies and lawsuits that she didn't know she had unknowingly become the top student goddess in the law faculty. She was smart, beautiful, and had top-notch professional skills. A girl like her would never lack admirers. There were indeed many boys interested in Gunyenji, but they couldn't find a chance to interact with her. Although Gunyenji was an orphan, she had an amazing tutor, Hijichu, who was famous for being protective of her. When Gunyenji was in school, she spent most of her time with him. Hijichu would glare coldly at anyone who approached her before Gunyenji noticed. She also heard from Machichi that her relatives also had connections with high-ranking military officials. Therefore, the people who had looked down on Gunyenji because she was an orphan didn't dare to do anything now. On the contrary, people with average backgrounds didn't even dare to think about her. It wasn't easy to get a chance to have a class activity. Those who thought they could give it a try were all rubbing their palms and getting ready to spend Christmas Eve with the beautiful girl. Because Gunyenji was talking to the boy, she took off her Bluetooth earpiece and didn't hang up on Hua Xiaoheng. Therefore, Hua Xiaoheng could hear her entire conversation with the boy. This was the first chapter with 3,300 words. It was the third chapter today. Monthly votes at 1 p.m. and 3,600 additional chapters. Third chapter at 7 p.m. Dear friends, the more monthly votes you give me, the more additional chapters I'll get. Isn't this a virtuous cycle? Chapter 907. After the boy left, Gunyenji put on the other Bluetooth earpiece. Hua Xiaoheng listened quietly for a long time before asking, "You're going to the ball this weekend?" "Yes." Gunyenji answered easily. "Tomorrow is Christmas Eve," Hua Xiaoheng said, his thoughts drifting back to last year's Christmas Eve. He thought of her sitting alone at the bus stop in the middle of the night. It had been snowing that day and he had taken a military plane from Sea City to pick her up. It seemed like it had happened yesterday, but it had already been a year. Gu Nianji's long legs kicked off and she got on her bike again. She asked Hua Xiaoheng nonchalantly, "Yes, what's wrong with Christmas Eve? I thought Hua Xiao didn't like foreign holidays? Alright, did you need me for something?" It seemed like she knew him well. "Only if I need you?" Hua Xiaoheng asked with a smile as he drove in the direction of Gu Nianji's school. "Did you forget that I'm pursuing you?" "Oh, I see." Gu Nianji curled her lips and her dark eyes curved. "Good luck, Hua Xiao." Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. At that moment, Hua Xiaoheng could almost imagine Gu Nianji's sweet and playful smile. Her plump lips must be curved upwards as if she was tempting him to kiss her. His throat immediately felt dry. Hua Xiaoheng coughed lightly. "You don't have class in the afternoon, so I'll pick you up to the new house?" The new house he was referring to was the second-hand house Gu Nianji had bought. It was in the Hepingli district near her school. Gu Nianji was speechless. Although she didn't have class, she still had to study. Gu Nianji didn't respond. Hua Xiaoheng waited a while before saying, "I was watching the Senate vote yesterday and started working as soon as I got home. I haven't eaten yet." Gu Nianji sighed, thinking that Hua Xiaoheng wasn't having it easy. Her voice softened. "Then go eat. Why are you looking for me? I don't know how to cook. Come to the new house. I'll make Spanish seafood fried rice for you." Hua Xiaoheng remembered that Gu Nianji liked it, but it was more troublesome to make it authentic. It required a special condiment, saffron. Saffron was known as the most expensive condiment on the Blue Planet. Of course, this was based on unit value and there were also good and bad ones. The saffron sold on the market was of average quality. Coincidentally, Hua Xiaoheng had a field agent bring him saffron from Iran. The quality was excellent. Iran was the origin of saffron and the largest producer of saffron in the world. Although Gu Nianji liked Spanish seafood fried rice, she didn't like to eat onions. However, onions were an essential ingredient in the Spanish seafood fried rice sold in restaurants and hotels. Only Hua Xiaoheng had once figured out a way to make authentic Spanish seafood fried rice without onions. The method was more complicated and he had been busy with work in the past. He had only done it for Gu Nianji 4 times in 6 years. Gu Nianji couldn't forget these 4 times. As expected, Gu Nianji hesitated. Hua Xiaoheng continued, "Bring your homework and computer over. I'll cook and you can continue studying." "Isn't this better? Both sides won't hold up?" Gu Nianji didn't say anything, but she was already a little tempted. Hua Xiaoheng made the decision for her. "I'm already driving over. I'll pick you up right away." Gu Nianji finally agreed and said, "Then I'll be back after eating. I don't need to bring homework." Hua Xiaoheng smiled without saying anything. He hung up and drove over. Gu Nianji returned to the dorm and saw Ma Chichi watching TV in the living room with a face mask on. "Chichi, do you know there's a Christmas party in class tomorrow?" Gu Nianji asked as she put down her bag and changed her shoes. Ma Chichi nodded. "I know." She continued, "They looked for me and wanted me to tell you that they invited you, but I thought you must have a date on the weekend, so I didn't tell you." "What's wrong? Did they still look for you?" Gu Nianji nodded with a smile and sat on the sofa. She poked Ma Chichi's arm. "Yes, they looked for me. But how can I have a date on the weekend? You're the one who has a date, right?" Ma Chichi was happy as soon as she thought about it. She happily leaned over to Gu Nianji and whispered, "Brother Xiong asked me to go out tomorrow. We're going to spend Christmas Eve together." "We're going to spend the night together?" Gu Nianji purposely misinterpreted Ma Chichi's words. "Do you want me to buy you 2 sets of sexy lingerie?" Ma Chichi was speechless. "Nianji, how can you say something that's not appropriate for children?" Ma Chichi suddenly grabbed Gu Nianji's ear. Of course, she didn't use any strength. She only pretended to be angry and wanted to teach her a lesson. Gu Nianji pushed her hand away with a smile and escaped from the sofa. "What's wrong? Are you blushing? Alright, are you and Brother Xiong committed?" "He said he wants me to be his girlfriend." Ma Chichi was a bit shy. "But we haven't really spent time together yet. You know, they're all so busy." "Yes, I know." Gu Nianji looked at Ma Chichi and felt like she was seeing herself in the past. "Chichi, I've been through it. Let me give you a piece of advice from the bottom of my heart. If you really love Brother Xiong and Brother Xiong loves you back, you must cherish the time you spend together. Although they're very busy and can't spend much time with you, 1 hour with them is equivalent to a month or even a year with someone else. But if the other person didn't love enough, then every minute and second they spent together was torture. Ma Chichi was stunned and only said after a while, Nianji, you're talking about yourself, right? Gu Nianji laughed and smoothed her hair before turning to walk back to her dorm. Of course not. I'm talking about you. You have to be mentally prepared to date Brother Xiong. Gu Nianji walked to her dorm room to wash her face and reapply cream. She opened the closet and saw the red Hermes Berlin bag Hua Xiaoheng had bought for her. She took it out and put her phone, wallet, and keys inside. Not long after, she heard her phone ring. It was Hua Xiaoheng coming to pick her up. Gu Nianji opened the door and said to Ma Chichi in the living room, I have something to do and need to go out. Don't wait for me for dinner tonight. Got it. Ma Chichi waved at her. I'm going out with Brother Xiong early tomorrow morning. I won't say goodbye. Gu Nianji stayed up all night to study and revise her thesis. She would definitely sleep in tomorrow, and Ma Chichi was already used to her routine. Gu Nianji waved back and opened the dorm door to go down. Hua Xiaoheng's low-key silver Bentley SUV was parked not far from the dorm. Gu Nianji walked over and knocked on the window. She smiled and waved at Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng opened the door to let her in and quickly drove out. You didn't bring your homework and computer? Hua Xiaoheng glanced at Gu Nianji and saw she was only carrying a small bag. Fortunately, she had daily necessities and a change of clothes. Otherwise, Hua Xiaoheng wouldn't even be able to keep her for the night. Seeing her like this, Gu Nianji took out her phone and smiled mischievously. A phone is enough. Why would I need a computer? Hua Xiaoheng didn't look at her. He turned the steering wheel and drove into the parking lot of the Hepingli district. When she got out of the car, she saw that Hua Xiaoheng was still carrying his briefcase. She couldn't help but sympathize with him. You still have to work overtime? Tomorrow is the weekend. I'm worried that something might happen, so it's more convenient to bring it with me, Hua Xiaoheng said vaguely as he entered the elevator with her. The room facing the elevator door was the second-hand house Gu Nianji had bought. Hua Xiaoheng swiped the key card to open the door and entered with Gu Nianji. Throwing the briefcase onto the sofa, he took off his coat and hung it up. Rolling up his sleeves, he said, I'm going to the kitchen to prepare. Do you want to rest? Gu Nianji thought about it and tossed her bag onto the sofa. I'll help you. Eh? Why do you want to learn how to cook? Hua Xiaoheng was very surprised. In the past, Gu Nianji had learned it a few times, but her cooking was still passable, so she stopped going into the kitchen. I can't always eat what you cook, right? Gu Nianji smiled slyly. It's better to learn on my own. Whenever I want to eat, I can make it myself. Her words sounded a little awkward. Hua Xiaoheng patted her head. His voice was deep and had a rare hint of sensuality. As long as you want to eat, I'll always make it for you. Gu Nianji tilted her head but smiled without saying anything. Who knew what would happen in the future? It was better to learn how to cook on her own. Hua Xiaoheng looked at her deeply and understood what she was thinking. Did she think that if she didn't say it, he wouldn't know? This was the second chapter. The monthly votes for 3,600 plus chapters had arrived. It was the third chapter today. The third chapter at 7 p.m. The more monthly votes my dear friends vote, the more chapters I'll get. Isn't this a virtuous cycle? P.S. I'm conflicted like this every day. Should I ask for monthly votes? Why don't I ask for it? I'm tired of asking for it every chapter. But I won't forget to ask for it. So asking for monthly votes is just a reminder. Then I'll ask for it. Looking at the monthly votes again, I'll definitely ask for it. Monthly votes. Chapter 908. The two of them went to the kitchen. Hua Xiaoheng opened the fridge and took out the bag of saffron. He picked out 2 saffrons, ground them into powder, and put them in a small plate with white orchids. Gu Nianji watched from the side and occasionally asked for technical advice. For example, what's the ratio of saffron to rice? If the prawns were replaced with lobsters, would the taste be the same? There were also whimsical ones. Can we put crab in the Spanish seafood fried rice? Can you change the lantern peppers to Spanish peppers? Would it taste better if it was spicy? Hua Xiaoheng was preparing the ingredients on the side, occasionally replying to her. He didn't say much, but every sentence was on point. Gu Nianji's camera-like memory recorded Hua Xiaoheng's every move in her mind. She remembered the weight and composition of the ingredients clearly. 2 hours had passed by the time he finished stir-frying all the ingredients and placed them into the pan with a lid to cook. Gu Nianji wiped the sweat from her forehead. Cooking is such a waste of time. As long as you don't think it's a waste when you eat it. The two of them went to wash their hands and sat down in the living room. Hua Xiaoheng asked again, Are you going to your class's Christmas party? Yeah. Gu Nianji didn't even look up as she took out her phone and scrolled through Weibo. Hua Xiaoheng reached out and took the phone from her hand. He said sullenly, "I'm talking to you. It's rude to play with your phone." Gu Nianji knew that she was only using her phone as a cover because she didn't want to face Hua Xiaoheng alone. She had to admit that Hua Xiaoheng put a lot of pressure on her. "I don't want to play anymore. Give me back my phone." Gu Nianji smiled and spread her hands. "I promise." Hua Xiaoheng looked at her for a while before returning the phone to her hand. "I'll confiscate it if you play with it while talking to me again." Fine. Whatever you say." Gu Nianji turned to put her phone back into her purse and secretly made a face at him. She thought that Hua Xiaoheng didn't see it, but she didn't know that Hua Xiaoheng was sitting next to her and was leaning forward to look at her. He clearly saw her little movement. By the time Gu Nianji turned around with a smile, Hua Xiaoheng had already leaned in and gently kissed her lips. Sure enough, it was as beautiful as he remembered. Once they kissed, they couldn't separate. Their lips were glued to each other. Every time Gu Nianji wanted to retreat, Hua Xiaoheng would chase after her relentlessly. She didn't know when his big hand had climbed up her slender waist and wrapped around it. With a little force, he lifted her up and placed her on his lap. His muscular waist pushed her legs apart and he kissed her face to face. Gu Nianji was practically kneeling on the sofa. His lower body was sore from that thing that had suddenly hardened. He had no choice but to raise his body slightly to avoid touching that heat. Hua Xiaoheng noticed and tightened his arms, almost pinning her to the ground. She was unable to move. She tried her best to lean back and struggled to break free from his shackles. Unfortunately, she was too weak and couldn't break free at all. She could only mumble, "Let me go. Be gentle. Don't bite me." How would she be able to go to the ball tomorrow if she got bitten? She didn't dare to struggle too much, afraid that Hua Xiaoheng's mouth would be even harsher. Hua Xiaoheng really wanted to bite her and leave his mark on her lips to declare his ownership. But there was still a sliver of reason that prevented him from doing so. Gu Nianji had her own life. Although he wasn't happy that she wanted to go to the class ball, he had no reason to stop her. Also, he was also busy. He had to attend the art performance on Christmas Eve. If he couldn't accompany her, wouldn't he let her find her own entertainment? His heart would ache to see her depressed all by herself. Hua Xiaoheng's movements softened and he stopped sucking on her lips. But he still touched her lips from time to time. Feeling the softness of her lips, he felt dizzy and suffocated. Finally, he stopped and hugged her. Their heads touched as they sat on the sofa. The two of them were quiet and didn't speak. Gu Nianji felt his body calm down and then carefully sat down. She moved back a little and tried to stay away from the indescribable important part. Hua Xiaoheng chuckled quietly and touched her forehead. His voice was a little hoarse. "Sit however you're comfortable. Don't worry about me." "I'm just looking for a comfortable place," Gu Nianji said angrily. She patted Hua Xiaoheng's leg. "It's hard everywhere. It's not comfortable no matter how I sit. Put me down." Hua Xiaoheng was quiet for a moment. He let go and let Gu Nianji sit on the sofa beside him. He stood up. "I'll go check the kitchen. Dinner should be almost ready." When he entered the kitchen, he heard the sizzling sound of the shallow pot. The soup was already cooked, but the rice was still fragrant. He turned off the fire and waited for a while before opening the lid and filling a bowl with rice for Gu Nianji. Then he took a small bowl for himself and scooped a little bit. He had actually already eaten. Not only had he eaten, but he was also very full. He could only eat for now and couldn't eat any more. However, when Hua Xiaoheng brought the rice out, Gu Nianji saw that his bowl was so small. She thought he had intentionally left it for her, so she quickly gave him more than half of her rice. "More. You haven't eaten for so long. Your body can't take it." Hua Xiaoheng rubbed his nose and looked at the pile of Spanish seafood fried rice in front of him. He said calmly, "It's because I'm starving. I can't eat so much at once." This reason was very normal. Gu Nianji accepted it and took the rice back. She had to admit that Hua Xiaoheng's exclusive Spanish seafood fried rice was really delicious. Although she had already eaten lunch, she was a little hungry again after 2 or 3 hours. She quickly finished her bowl and went to get another. Hua Xiaoheng only ate half a bowl and stopped eating. He went to make a cup of pu or tea and twirled it in his hands as he looked at Gu Nianji. After this case, Gu Nianji seemed to have lost a lot of weight. Her skin was very pale, but it was too pale. There was no color at all. Her waist seemed to have become slimmer. He remembered that he seemed to have done too much the previous weekend. He still remembered that his red fingers were imprinted on the snow-white skin of her waist like 2 blooming saffron flowers. The soft and beautiful curve of her back suddenly narrowed to a small circle at her waist. Further down, her chest didn't lose any weight at all, so her waist seemed even slimmer. He pinched it from behind. Hua Xiaoheng's mouth was dry, and he quickly took another sip of tea. After Gu Nianji finished eating, she took the initiative to clean up the dishes and put them in the dishwasher. Then she wiped the kitchen. From the direction of the kitchen, she saw Hua Xiaoheng sitting alone in the dining room with a teacup in his hand. His fingers were long and strong. His palms weren't thick and they were perfectly shaped. However, there were faint calluses on the inside of his fingers. This was the mark of someone who held a gun all year round. His facial features were very defined. Under the soft light of the setting sun, there was an indescribable charm to him. He was so handsome that it made people speechless. However, Gu Nianji had already passed the stage of being infatuated with his looks. She only sighed at such a beautiful person, but didn't have much heart. Sometimes, a careless attitude was even more painful than betrayal. Betrayal could make you angry, but carelessness would only make you sullen. Gu Nianji looked away and turned to take off her apron. She walked out of the kitchen. Hua Xiao, thank you for the Spanish seafood fried rice. It was delicious. But I have to go back. Hua Xiaoheng didn't move. He still sat quietly in the dining room with one hand supporting his head and the other holding the teacup. Suddenly his gaze fell on Gu Nianji. He was silent, but it seemed like he had 1,000 things to say, but didn't know where to start. Gu Nianji was a bit at a loss. She slowly walked to the sofa in the living room and picked up her small bag. When she walked to the door, Hua Xiaoheng finally caught up to her. He hugged her from behind and began kissing the back of her neck. Nianji, stay with me. His extremely magnetic voice lingered in her ears and drilled into her heart. It knocked again and again, stubbornly and firmly, to knock on the door of her heart. Gu Nianji didn't know why, but she turned around and hugged him. The two of them entangled and quickly took off their clothes from the living room to the bedroom. Tops, pants, bras and underwear were all scattered on the floor. When they finally lay on the bed, the two of them no longer had anything to hide. Gu Nianji lay on the bed, revealing her snow-white, deep cleavage. In Hua Xiaoheng's eyes, this was the sexiest part of a woman's body. He leaned over and, bit by bit, patiently and meticulously, kissed from the top of her cleavage all the way down. Gu Nianji felt like her back was on fire. The fire spread from her back all the way down to her tailbone, and then with a loud bang, it soared up again, almost burning her limbs and bones to ashes. She didn't know when she fell asleep, but before she fell asleep she was still thinking about taking a shower. In the end she was hugged in the bathtub again. Finally, before she fainted, she vaguely thought that no wonder Hua Xiaoheng wanted to cook for her. He was feeding her before he started. When she woke up the next day she found herself snuggled tightly in Hua Xiaoheng's arms. One of Hua Xiaoheng's arms was under her neck, and the other was still on her waist. His leg was also pressed against hers in a completely possessive posture. No wonder she felt so tired from sleeping last night, as if she had been climbing a mountain and carrying a log. So, it was this thick log. Gu Nianji moved back and freed herself from Hua Xiaoheng's shackles. Hua Xiaoheng opened his eyes and looked at her with a smile. You're awake. Gu Nianji twisted her neck and sat up. What time is it? She leaned over Hua Xiaoheng and picked up the phone beside the bed to look at it. Oh, it's already 10 o'clock? She had slept enough. She looked at the phone again and saw the location of the Christmas party that the boy had sent her. Jinling Bar. Gu Nianji looked at it and opened Chengdu to search for the bar. Hua Xiaoheng got up to take a shower. He originally wanted to drag Gu Nianji to shower with him, but Gu Nianji's phone happened to ring. Hua Xiaoheng didn't insist and went to the bathroom alone. When Gu Nianji answered He Zhichu's call, she didn't know why, but she felt a little guilty. Professor He? Nianji, where are you? I didn't see you at the library. He Zhichu stood in front of the B University library as he called Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji forced a smile. I'm not at school. Professor He, do you need something? Oh yes. He Zhichu seemed to understand something. His heart felt stifled, but he didn't say anything. He waited for the discomfort to pass before saying, I have an invitation to the military arts performance tonight. Do you want to go? If you do, I'll take you with me. Gu Nianji replied with an oh, and quickly said, I promised my classmates that I would go to the Christmas party tonight, so I won't be going. Professor He, enjoy yourselves. The military arts performance will be great. When He Zhichu heard that Gu Nianji was going to the Christmas party, he immediately said, Where are you guys having the party? I'll go with you. Aren't you going to the military arts performance? Gu Nianji asked in surprise. I'm not going. If you're not going, what's the point of me going alone? He Zhichu refused flatly. This was the third update, 3,400 words. It was the third update today. Chapter 909. Oh. Gunyenji was taken aback. You're going to our class's Christmas dance? But what? Don't tell me they don't welcome us? Hijichu said slowly, one hand in his coat pocket gradually clenching. Or you don't want me to go? Of course not. Gunyenji instinctively denied it. She sat up on the bed with her phone in her hand and pulled the blanket up to her neck. She said carefully, Professor He, this Christmas party is actually a place for classmates to get to know each other and bond. Gunyenji didn't dare to imagine what the occasion would be like if the professor went. Hijichu snickered. Are you afraid of dragging you down? Don't worry, I'll go by myself. I won't affect you. After saying that, he hung up the phone. Gunyenji smiled wryly as she listened to the beeping sound on the other end. She actually didn't care about that, but when she thought about it carefully, it didn't seem right if Hijichu went to the Christmas party with her. Hijichu was a professor and she was his student. She was also his teaching assistant. Because of their work and studies, they spent more time together. Although Gunyenji didn't have a close relationship with her classmates, she knew people were gossiping about her behind her back. She was magnanimous, so she didn't take it to heart. But if he appeared at the Christmas party, the gossip behind his back would probably be even worse. Gunyenji didn't care, but she knew it would hurt her teacher's reputation even more. Therefore she did not call back. If Hijichu had another way to attend their class's Christmas party, Gunyenji would be quite happy. After all, she didn't know many classmates in her class. Machichi, who was the closest to her, had already made it clear that she wasn't going. She had a date with her boyfriend on the weekend. Gunyenji was going to a Christmas party in a foreign place by herself. It was quite awkward to think about it. However, if Hijichu went as well, it would be good to talk to him when the time came. As long as they didn't arrive at the same time as her, no one would gossip. After thinking it through, Gunyenji no longer felt conflicted. She lifted the blanket and got up from the bed. She grabbed the nightgown at the head of the bed and put it on. Then she opened the wardrobe and picked out the clothes for the ball today. Since it was a ball, she would most likely wear a dress. Autumn and winter skirts were too thick for dancing. She rummaged in the closet for a long time and found a one-shoulder apricot silk dress with a high slit. The quality of the silk was very good. Under the light, it was as smooth as clear water. The hem of the skirt was inlaid with a few strings of lotus-colored silk flowers. It was so lifelike that it looked just like the real thing. She draped it over her body and looked at her reflection in the mirror. It made her skin look even fairer and more delicate. She shook her skirt, took off her nightgown and casually put it on. Because she wasn't wearing a bra, as soon as she adjusted her dress, she saw two obvious bulges on her chest in the mirror. Gunyenji, Hua Xiaoheng came out of the bathroom and leaned against the door frame. He crossed his arms and looked at her. He was dressed neatly but not in casual attire. He was wearing a white shirt with a small collar. He couldn't tell what brand it was, but it fit him so well. It was probably custom-made. His slender trousers were straight and wrapped around his long legs. Even the leather belt around his waist gave off a sense of abstinence. Tightly bound his wild nature. Gunyenji blinked and met Hua Xiaoheng's gaze in the mirror. She said, "How about wearing this dress to the dance tonight?" Hua Xiaoheng walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. He bent down slightly and was eye level with her. He whispered in her ear briefly but firmly, "No. Gunyenji, why not? This dress will definitely look good dancing." Gunyenji argued with Hua Xiaoheng and tried to reason with him. "I can also do Latin dance. Look at this opening. When I reveal my legs and kick them out, I'll definitely shock everyone." She pointed to the slanted curve near her thigh under the dress for Hua Xiaoheng to see. Hua Xiaoheng looked down and reached out to touch her thigh. He said, "Wearing this dress will only make people want to tear it apart." As he spoke, he really grabbed it. Gunyenji quickly grabbed his hand. "No. I like this dress very much. If you dare to tear it, You'll what?" Hua Xiaoheng leaned forward and held her slender waist with both hands. His palms were faintly burning. Gunyenji opened her mouth and wanted to say something harsh, but Hua Xiaoheng didn't let her speak at all. He lowered his head and kissed her. Gunyenji quickly pressed her lips together and turned her head away from him. She mumbled, "Don't. I haven't brushed my teeth yet. It's not like I despise you." Hua Xiaoheng held her head and kissed her in the end. As he kissed her, he took out his phone and glanced at it. He swiped it open to open an application control app. Not long after, the sound of distant and warm music began to play in the house. When the house was renovated, the bedroom and living room were all equipped with surround sound Bluetooth speakers. Gunyenji could tell it was the carpenter's famous, "Merry Christmas, Darling" Merry Christmas, my darling baby. The carpenter's voice from half a century ago had been baptized by time and was like a crystal polished by time. It was even more pure and affectionate, without any impurities. Wu Xiaoheng took a step back and reached out his hand. He looked down at her and said quietly, "May I?" It was actually the prelude to a dance. His gaze was so focused that it was impossible to ignore it. His dark, jade-like eyes seemed to be able to absorb souls. Gun Yinji seemed to be bewitched. She placed her hand in his. Wu Xiaoheng held her soft little hand with one hand and placed the other on her waist. He slid a step forward and began spinning her in the small bedroom. Gun Yinji had never known that Wu Xiaoheng was also an expert at ballroom dancing. His sense of rhythm was very strong. His arms were strong, so he led her in a slow and smooth dance. They spun and intertwined. You advance, I retreat. You front, I back. Her intertwined palms were sweaty and a bit wet. Her heart was pounding and her footsteps were almost flustered. She almost stepped on Wu Xiaoheng's feet several times. But he was able to pick her up and spin her with a little force in his arms. He felt her nervousness and lowered his head to kiss her forehead. His warm lips gradually calmed Gun Yinji's heart. She composed herself and began to dance to Wu Xiaoheng's rhythm. She had also learned before. She had secretly practiced with Little Temptress and the others when she was in college, but she had never had the chance to dance with anyone else. She had once had a small selfish wish that her first dance had to be with Wu Xiaoheng. If it wasn't for Wu Xiaoheng, she would never have danced in this life. But after so many things happened, she decided to leave him, and her previous wish disappeared. She didn't expect Wu Xiaoheng to use this kind of method to secretly fulfill her dream. Gun Yinji looked down to hide the wetness in the corners of her eyes. The music slowed down and only 4 sentences kept repeating. All the cards have been sent, the busyness of the holiday is also gradually fading, but I still have one wish I haven't made, for the most special you, Merry Christmas, darling. When the music finally stopped, Wu Xiaoheng also stopped in his tracks. He picked Gun Yinji up and placed her feet on his. He lowered his head and whispered in her ear, "Merry Christmas, my darling." His pure Oxford accent paired with his magnetic and deep voice made Gun Yinji's heart feel like it had been rolled in powdered sugar and then poured with honey. It was so sweet that it was against the rules. Gun Yinji hugged Wu Xiaoheng's neck tightly. She was so moved that her entire body was trembling. Wu Xiaoheng didn't move and let her hug him tightly. His 2 arms crossed behind her and protected her in his arms. He didn't use any force, but it made her feel extremely safe. The sense of security that she cherished the most seemed to be returning bit by bit. After a while, Gun Yinji said in a hoarse voice, "I won't celebrate foreign holidays if you don't celebrate them. You don't have to do this in the future. Besides, this kind of rare time was good enough to have once. She could reminisce about it for the rest of her life. It would be boring if it was too much." Wu Xiaoheng patted her back. "It's fine at home." It wasn't like they were going to church with great fanfare. When it was just the 2 of them, Wu Xiaoheng didn't mind satisfying some of Gun Yinji's small wishes. Gun Yinji snuggled in his arms and grunted softly. Wu Xiaoheng continued, "Leave this dress at home. Wear it when you dance with me." "Okay." Gun Yinji obediently agreed. Even if Wu Xiaoheng hadn't said it, she had planned to keep this dress as a souvenir. This was the dress they wore when they danced for the first time. It was the kind that she would remember for the rest of her life. "I'll help you pick out a dress." Wu Xiaoheng released his arms. "My Yinji is so beautiful. You'll definitely amaze the audience today." Although he sounded like he was coaxing a child, Gun Yinji enjoyed it. She followed behind Wu Xiaoheng and watched him pick out the dance dress for her tonight. Wu Xiaoheng opened her closet and looked around. He picked out a dress from the ones that still had tags on them. Gun Yinji looked at it and saw that it was a very designer red cocoon-shaped dress from Dior. The style was a bit exaggerated, especially on the chest and waist. It accentuated her high chest, slender waist, long and straight legs, and even her knees were rare and flawless. Gun Yinji was speechless. "Isn't this too exaggerated?" Gun Yinji was a bit uneasy. Actually, the dress was too mature and too expensive. It was obvious that it was expensive. It was enough to attend the White House dinner. It was overdressed for a small-class Christmas dance. Boys dressed more normally wouldn't even dare to stand next to her. "Is it as exaggerated as your dress just now?" Wu Xiaoheng said calmly and went to look for jewelry for her. Gun Yinji was speechless. Gun Yinji rubbed her nose and tactfully didn't retort. When Wu Xiaoheng hung the pigeon egg-sized ruby and diamond necklace around her neck, Gun Yinji had already accepted her fate. The sparkling gold was probably for the occasion. He wanted her to be a Christmas tree. After picking out the dress, Gunyenji went to the bathroom to wash up. Then she took a bath and did some body care. Women always felt like they didn't have enough time to take care of themselves. Fortunately, Hua Xiaoheng was also busy and didn't think it was a problem for Gunyenji to spend 3 hours in the bathroom. He sat on the sofa in front of the bathroom and worked on his laptop while keeping an eye on Gunyenji to make sure she didn't fall asleep in the bathtub. Gunyenji finished cleaning up. When she came out of the bathroom, she realized it was already 2 in the afternoon. She sat in front of the vanity to dry her hair. She suddenly remembered something and asked, "Hua Xiao, how can you dance so well? When did you learn? Why didn't I know?" Hua Xiaoheng calmly closed his laptop and rubbed his nose. He looked around and asked, "What time is your ball tonight? What do you want to eat?" "Golden collar bar at 6. I'm not hungry now." Gunyenji frowned. "You still haven't answered my question." Hua Xiaoheng walked over and took the hairdryer from her hand. He used his hand to dry her hair and said calmly, "This is something everyone in the department has to learn. Everyone knows how to do it. If you don't believe me, you can ask Big Xiong and Little Zhe." Actually, Hua Xiaoheng didn't want to tell Gunyenji about the content of their training. It was better to avoid trouble. As a man, he naturally knew how not to cause unnecessary trouble for himself. Gunyenji was especially smart. Not only did she have a good memory, but she could also draw inferences about other things from one instance. Hua Xiaoheng's instinct was that if he explained everything clearly, it would probably cause endless trouble in the future. Gunyenji was indeed convinced by his answer. She smiled and said, "Then everyone in your department should be good at hitting on girls. Why are Brother Xiong and Brother Zhe still single?" Hua Xiaoheng smiled. "We don't hit on girls. That's a mission." It was precisely because they knew too much that they didn't want to use it in their own lives. They were better than most people at distinguishing true feelings from false ones. Gunyenji smiled knowingly. Time passed especially quickly when the two of them were together. Soon it was already 5:30. It was winter in the imperial capital, so the sky darkened especially early. Hua Xiaoheng called Fan Jian to drive over. "I'll have Fan Jian give you a ride." Hua Xiaoheng narrowed his eyes as he adjusted the necklace around Gunyenji's neck. "Call me when you're done." Gunyenji nodded and put on her coat before following Hua Xiaoheng downstairs to the parking lot. Fan Jian was already waiting in Hua Xiaoheng's Bentley SUV. The two of them got into the car and sat in the backseat. Fan Jian quickly drove to the road in front of Golden Collar Bar. Gunyenji got out of the car. Several classmates waiting at the bar entrance waved happily at her and called out, "Gunyenji, this way." Gunyenji smiled and was about to walk over when Hua Xiaoheng called out to her from the car. "Yenji." Gunyenji turned around and saw that the window of the Bentley had already been rolled down. Hua Xiaoheng was wearing sunglasses, revealing half of his side profile. He was so handsome that it made her heart flutter. There were no lights in the car. Only the light from the street lamps shone down. It was half bright and half dark, making his aura even more mysterious and vast. "What's the matter?" Gunyenji walked back to the window and bowed slightly. She looked at Hua Xiaoheng in surprise. Hua Xiaoheng suddenly reached out and grabbed Gunyenji's neck. He gently pulled her down. In front of Gunyenji's classmate, under the flickering Christmas lights and faintly discernible music, he kissed her in front of the bar. This was the first chapter of the 4,000-word chapter. The second chapter at 7 o'clock p.m. Come on, hurry up and vote for the monthly and recommendation votes. It should be the third chapter tomorrow. P.S. Thank you to the leader of Enigma Yangxi for tipping 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Moi. Chapter 9-10. Gunyenji's mind instantly went blank. She could hear the Christmas song Edelweiss coming from the bar. The sound was faint and lingered in her ears. The melodious and warm tune drifted through the winter night like someone was gently brushing her ears with a feather. She was clearly kissing her lips, but she felt her ears burning. She groggily opened her eyes and looked behind Hua Xiaoheng. Looking out of the car window, the street lights were orange-yellow, bringing with them a rare warmth on a winter night. However, it was pitch black inside the car, so outsiders couldn't see what was going on inside. They could only see Hua Xiaoheng's exquisite jaw exposed and the slight curve of his lips. He was very close to Gunyenji. The male students in front of the bar were dumbstruck and completely didn't know how to react. They even forgot to take out their phones to secretly take a picture. After all, a luxurious car, a beautiful woman, and a mysterious handsome man in sunglasses kissing passionately. If this photo was posted on Weibo, it would easily get thousands of reposts. Unfortunately, the man's aura was too strong. Even though he was just sitting in the car and showing half his face, it was enough to make these self-proclaimed pillars of society's university law students unable to move. After a moment of dizziness, Gu Nianji finally snapped out of it. She thought a long time had passed, but it had only been a few seconds before Hua Xiaoheng let go. Go have fun. Hua Xiaoheng patted Gu Nianji's cheek and was satisfied to see her face blush. Gu Nianji straightened and instinctively wiped her lips with her hand. Hua Xiaoheng had probably eaten all the pink lip gloss she had put on when she left the house. Hua Xiaoheng calmly took out a tissue and wiped his mouth. Sure enough, he saw a bright red stain on the snow-white tissue. He smiled and waved at Gu Nianji before ordering Fan Jian, go to the military compound. Fan Jian started the car and drove off in the direction of the military hall. Gu Nianji stood by the side of the road and silently watched Hua Xiaoheng's car disappear into the night. She patted her face. It was so hot. She turned around and, as expected, saw a row of male students staring at her with their mouths open and eyes wide. Gu Nianji walked over and waved at them. What's wrong? Don't you recognize me? She acted as if nothing had happened, which made the students too embarrassed to ask her. How could that be? Gu Nianji, this way we've booked the whole place for today. The class president of Class 1 was a bespectacled man who wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses all year round. He was quite good-looking and handsome, much better looking than Mei Xiaowen, the class president of Gu Nianji's undergraduate years. He was usually the one to notify Gu Nianji when something happened in class, so he was more familiar with her than the others. Gu Nianji nodded at him and followed him inside. The bar wasn't too big, but it was decorated warmly. Furthermore, it was specially decorated for Christmas. There was a huge Christmas tree as soon as they entered the door. It was rare that it wasn't a fake plastic tree, but a real fir tree from who knows where. As he walked closer, he could smell the fresh scent of pine leaves. The tree was covered with all kinds of sparkling trinkets. The top of the tree was decorated with a winged doll of a saintess. There was a halo above her head and it was actually colorful. The lights in the bar matched the colors of the Christmas lights, illuminating everyone in a variety of colors. Gu Nianji followed her classmates inside. The middle of the bar had been cleared for a dance floor. Directly across from the dance floor was the bar counter, where the bartender was already mixing drinks. Gu Nianji looked at the bar counter and suddenly remembered when she was in Germany, she had also stayed in a bar for a few days. She pursed her lips and felt a bit strange as she slowly followed her classmates to where everyone was sitting. The dining area was separated from the dance floor by a screen, and there were several square tables in the small area. The food was on the square tables in a buffet style. Gu Nianji had already eaten her fill at home and came over. She took a quick look and only planned to eat some fruit later. She had no appetite for anything else. Gu Nianji, you came alone? Class 1's counselor, Gui Suyao, stood up with a smile. Where's Professor He? He didn't come with you? Gu Nianji's heart skipped a beat, and she secretly thought to herself that he had tricked her again. She immediately put on an even more surprised expression than Gui Suyao. Professor He? He's coming too? Gui Suyao was momentarily speechless. He Jichu had asked her about Class 1's Christmas party today and had said, intentionally or otherwise, that he was free today and wanted to see how the students celebrated Christmas. Gui Suyao was well aware at the time. Last Christmas was He Jichu's first Christmas as a lecturer at B University, and she had never seen him care about how the students celebrated Christmas. However, he was interested this year, and it was all because of Gu Nianji. Of course, she didn't expose him and said enthusiastically, "That's great. The students from Class 1 are going to Jinling Bar for a Christmas party today. If Professor He is free, you can come and visit." He Jichu didn't say he wouldn't be coming at the time. He only said he had things to do and would go see if he could finish them early. If not, he wouldn't go and told them not to wait for him. Gui Suyao only thought He Jichu was being polite, but now that Gu Nianji was here, she instinctively felt that He Jichu must be with her. However, after she said it, before Gu Nianji could deny it, one of the boys from Class 1 who had been outside earlier was already laughing mischievously. He winked and said, "Guess what we just saw outside?" Before anyone could ask, the boy already said eagerly, "We saw Gu Nianji's boyfriend. TSK, and you're still talking about Professor He? What nonsense. Gu Nianji's boyfriend is not only rich, but he's also very handsome. He's not any worse than Professor He." Gu Nianji's face flushed and then paled. She wasn't very happy, but if she reacted too strongly to this kind of gossip, it would give others the opportunity to accuse her of hiding something. Pursing her lips, Gu Nianji sat down on the sofa and said to the boy who had just spoken, Oh? Professor, he is my tutor. What nonsense are you guys talking about? Be careful or I'll sue you. They were all law students, so they didn't overdo it. As expected, everyone fell silent and didn't mention it again. Someone changed the topic and began a drinking competition with someone else. A few girls sat next to the tutor, Gui Suyao, and looked curiously at Gu Nianji's clothing and jewelry. A girl who was very interested in fashion suddenly said, "The dress Gu Nianji is wearing is from Dior's spring collection next year." She took out her phone and searched for Dior's spring collection next year. The fashion industry was like this. During the winter, the next spring collection would already be held. By next summer, the winter collection would begin. It was always several months ahead of the actual season. The girl's phone indeed found a dress that was exactly the same as the one Gu Nianji was wearing. It was Dior's latest spring collection. TSK, this isn't normal. Even the A-list celebrities in the country can't get their hands on such a big brand like Dior. I heard it's only available to global VIP customers. It's not just the dress. Look at the ruby necklace around her neck. That's a standard pigeon blood ruby. My uncle is in the jewelry business, so it's considered a big business. But even my uncle's family doesn't have rubies of this purity. The girls sat together and studied Gu Nianji from head to toe. They weren't familiar with Gu Nianji, and Gu Nianji was dressed so extravagantly today. They weren't idiots, so they didn't want to sit next to her and look like country bumpkins. Therefore they intentionally stayed away from her. Occasionally they would say sarcastically, "Although she's dressed extravagantly, she looks old. Don't look like she's a young married woman." Jiske. The girl who was close to Ma Chichi couldn't stand it anymore. She frowned at the sarcastic girl and said, "That's enough. Watch your tongue. Nianji is only 19 and looks like a young married woman. You're already 26. What do you look like? An old woman? Why are you scolding me?" The sarcastic girl couldn't get over her embarrassment and flew into a rage. These kinds of people were usually like this. They were the only ones allowed to be sarcastic. If others were to be sarcastic about them, it would be like poking a hornet's nest. The boys saw this and quickly came to the rescue, separating the girls who were about to start a fight. Gu Nianji heard it from the side and nodded at the girl who helped her out with a smile. The girl was a bit embarrassed and wanted to go over to talk to her, but after what happened just now, if she went over, people might think she was trying to suck up to Gu Nianji. Therefore, after thinking about it, she only nodded slightly and didn't go over. It wasn't that no one came over to Gu Nianji. The first to come over were two boys who had designs on her since a long time ago. Gu Nianji's outfit today was too beautiful. They could only see her face and figure, especially her figure. Oh my god, this dress suit made her body look like a devil. Therefore, even though they saw that Gu Nianji was already taken, they didn't want to give up. In this day and age, people could get divorced after getting married, let alone having a boyfriend. Who knew if they would break up in the future? It was always a good idea to get acquainted with her first. Also, young people were hormonal, so they didn't have as many concerns. Their families were also quite well off, so they were dressed smartly today. They didn't think it was beneath them to sit next to Gu Nianji. A few of them took the buffet plates and picked a few dishes for Gu Nianji. "Classmate Gu, why aren't you eating? We're going to dance later." "How can you dance if you're hungry?" "Classmate Gu, what drinks do you usually drink?" "Juice." "From the looks of it, you must only drink juice and milk, right?" "Classmate Gu, what kind of dance do you like?" "Latin dance?" "Your legs are so long, you must be very beautiful when you dance Latin." When Hijichu came in, he saw Gu Nianji sitting on the sofa, surrounded by a group of boys, like stars surrounding the moon. It was the second watch. Come, hurry up and cast your monthly and recommendation votes. It should be the third watch tomorrow. Chapter 9:11. Gu Nianji was wearing a very elegant and mature red dress today. The front was slightly exposed, and a necklace with pigeon blood rubies and diamonds slid across her snow-white collarbone. If it weren't for the fact that her face and expression were still brimming with the elegance of a young girl, the dress alone would make her look 4 or 5 years older than her actual age. However, this was the benefit of being beautiful. No matter what she did, it would only make her look prettier and have a different kind of beauty. Sitting on the sofa, she happened to look about the same age as the male students who were 4 or 5 years older than her. It actually made her look more harmonious. Beside these students, she looked at ease, and her smile was relaxed and carefree. Unlike when she was with Hua Xiaoheng, her attitude was reverent but distant. Unlike when she was with Hijichu, her expression was always respectful but distant. Hijichu laughed self-deprecatingly and was in no hurry to walk over. He would let Gu Nianji enjoy the happy time with her peers. He couldn't lock her up in a cage, could he? Although he really wanted to do that, it was only a thought. Ijichu walked to the bar next to the dance floor and sat down. He pointed to the bartender, "Give me a tequila sunrise." Tequila sunrise was a world-famous cocktail. It used tequila as the base and mixed with various freshly squeezed juices. It had the sweetness of fruit wine and the spiciness of tequila. It was very suitable for Hijichu's current mood. The bartender's hair was dyed red, and his forehead was dyed gold. The color of his hair would have been an eyesore under natural light, but it was surprisingly fitting in the glass with the Christmas lights shining on it. He looked at Hijichu and asked with a smile, "Are you also with those students?" The bar had been booked by the master's students from the B University Faculty of Law. Hijichu didn't look like a student, so the bartender wanted to confirm it. Hijichu nodded, "I'm their professor." The bartender happily snapped his fingers to indicate that he understood. He turned to take out a bottle of Mexican imported tequila from the liquor cabinet and began mixing it. At the same time, Hua Xiaoheng had just gotten out of the car at the entrance of the military auditorium. In the car, he changed into the military uniform that Fan Jian had brought for him. It was a formal Major General's uniform. The golden pine leaves on the epaulets shone with a golden star. It was very imposing. The weapon belt around his waist tightened around his muscular waist, making his long legs even more eye-catching. "Major General Hua, this way please." The female soldier at the entrance of the auditorium was a member of the song and dance troupe. She had specially recognized all the VIPs present today. If she called them by the wrong name or title, it would be a mistake. Hua Xiaoheng nodded and handed over his invitation. The female soldier personally led Hua Xiaoheng into the hall and helped him find a seat. Surprisingly, it was the second row in the middle of the auditorium. Sitting in the first row were older generals like General Ji. The lowest rank was a lieutenant general. The second row was much freer. Hua Xiaoheng looked up and saw that his parents were both sitting in the same row. Hua Guanchen was sitting next to Song Jining and was talking to her with his head lowered. Song Jining sat up straight with an indifferent look on her face. No one knew if she was listening or not. Hua Xiaoheng looked at his seat and saw that it was on the other side of Song Jining. He adjusted the brim of his hat and walked over. "Xiaoheng, you're here." Song Jining looked up to see Hua Xiaoheng walking over. Ignoring Hua Guanchen's words, she stood up in surprise. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "You're here too." He then sat down on the other side of Song Jining. Song Jining had arrived a little earlier and ended up being dragged away by Hua Guanchen to talk. She was about to die of annoyance, but she didn't want to embarrass him in public. If she did that, not only would Hua Guanchen be embarrassed but she would also be embarrassed. She didn't want to embarrass herself because of someone she had nothing to do with. Therefore she only sat there patiently and thought about her experiment. She didn't hear a single word that Hua Guanchen said. Now that Hua Xiaoheng was here, Song Jining finally breathed a sigh of relief. Otherwise it would be a really sad night. Hua Xiaoheng sat down and looked at the seating arrangement. He vaguely felt that it was arranged in advance. The news of him attending the performance had been reported the day before yesterday. The people in the seating arrangement had arranged the three of them together. Hua Xiaoheng's eyes flickered slightly. He leaned towards Song Jining to listen to her. Song Jining's first words were, "Why did you come alone? Where's Nianji? You didn't bring her?" Hua Xiaoheng choked. He quickly glanced at Song Jining and said dryly, "Nianji's class has an activity today. She went to participate." Song Jining accepted Hua Xiaoheng's explanation. She had spent her entire life in a school and research environment, so she was very accepting of these kinds of situations. "That's right. It's Christmas Eve today. University students all like to take this opportunity to have fun. The new postdocs in our institute are all clamoring to celebrate Christmas Eve." Hua Xiaoheng clasped his hands in front of his chest and narrowed his eyes. "Your institute is only a research institute. If the military also celebrates Christmas, ha." Song Jining glanced at him and frowned. "That's not necessary, right?" "Not necessary?" Hua Xiaoheng's expression was calm, but his words were a little harsh. "There has never been a performance on Christmas Eve. What do you think?" "A coincidence?" Song Jining sighed and didn't speak. At that moment, a surprised voice came from Hua Xiaoheng's side. "Major General Hua? Is that you?" Hua Xiaoheng turned his head and glanced over coolly. He discovered that it was actually Kai Xingnan walking over and sitting next to him. On Kai Xingnan's other side, Prime Minister Tan Dongbang walked over and sat down. Separated by Kai Xingnan, Tan Dongbang extended his hand to Hua Xiaoheng and said happily, Major General Hua, nice to meet you. Hua Xiaoheng could only extend his white-gloved hand to shake his. Prime Minister Tan is also attending the military's performance. What an honor. Major General Hua is too polite. Prime Minister Tan's face was glowing as he pointed to the stage. Today is little darling's first performance. I was worried that she would have stage fright, so I came specifically to support her. Hua Xiaoheng withdrew his hand and smiled. Prime Minister Tan's beloved daughter is extremely skilled and has seen much of the world in the United States. How could she have stage fright? Prime Minister Tan is worrying too much. He then asked, Where's Mrs. Tan? Why isn't she here? That's true, haha. Prime Minister Tan laughed heartily. My wife isn't feeling well, so she won't be coming. Xingnan will be attending in her place. Also, if I had known that Major General Hua would be here as well, I wouldn't have come. With you here, little darling will definitely not be afraid anymore. What a statement. It was as if Tan Guiren and Hua Xiaoheng had some sort of relationship. Even Hua Xiaoheng, who had always been calm and collected, couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. Song Jining was infuriated listening from the side. She tilted her head with a straight face and said, It's Prime Minister Tan? Don't get impeached again if you speak so carelessly. If our Xiaoheng's pure reputation is ruined by one sentence from you, I won't just stand by and watch. Tan Dongbang's smug smile instantly froze on his face. It was like someone was strangling him and his face almost turned purple. Although he had won the impeachment case, it was still embarrassing. Most people didn't dare mention it in front of him. He hadn't expected Song Jining, the director of the Institute of High Energy Physics, to retort. His expression quickly changed several times. Prime Minister Tan was about to speak when Kai Xingnan already made her move. Madam, may I ask who you are? Our Prime Minister's words and actions are all based on evidence. There is no slander. Please don't threaten my client. Kai Xingnan was the Prime Minister's secretary in Tan Dongbang's private legal team, so there was nothing wrong with her saying that Prime Minister Tan was her client. Tan Dongbang was greatly relieved and regained his smile. He pretended to be magnanimous as he patted Kai Xingnan's hand. Little Kai, don't be so formal. I know your professional abilities are strong, but that Madame Song is Major General Hua's mother. Aren't you offending Major General Hua by saying that? Ah. Kai Xingnan was shocked. She hadn't expected this stunning lady who looked only 27 or 28 years old to be Hua Xiaoheng's mother. She was too young. Was she his biological mother? Kai Xingnan recalled the information she had gathered on the Huaxia Empire's top officials. She regretfully discovered that most of her information was about the members of the Senate. She didn't know anything about most of the military officers, and even some of the important government officials. That was why she was blushing. She thought about it and leaned forward. She reached out to Song Jining with Hua Xiaoheng in between them. You are Madame Song? Major General Hua's mother? I really couldn't tell that you're so young and already have such an outstanding son like Major General Hua. Her arm hung across Hua Xiaoheng's thigh. It was slender and natural with the lingering charm of a ballet dancer. Kai Xingnan had indeed practiced ballet since she was young, so her bearing and temperament were much better than the average girls. However, this posture didn't look very pleasant. Song Jining frowned at her and reached out to push her arm back. Madam Kai wants to talk to me? Okay. She turned to Hua Xiaoheng and said, Xiaoheng, let's switch seats. You sit with your father. He's too noisy and it's affecting my ability to watch the program. Hua Guanchen had been smiling and watching the drama unfold. He hadn't expected Song Jining to sell him out in order to help her son out. His expression instantly darkened. Hua Xiaoheng couldn't have asked for more. He took Song Jining's arm and stood up from the seat. Please sit here. Then he said to Prime Minister Tan and Kai Xingnan apologetically, Prime Minister Tan, Madam Kai, my mother really likes music. When she appreciates music, she doesn't like noisy people around her. I hope you can understand. These words made Prime Minister Tan and Kai Xingnan immediately blush. Wasn't chattering at a concert something that the most uncultured people did? Hua Xiaoheng's words had needles hidden in them. They weren't rude at all, but the meaning behind his words was like a whip lashing at Prime Minister Tan and Kai Xingnan. He had said this to, on one hand, attack Prime Minister Tan and Kai Xingnan's spirit, and on the other hand, indicate that his family didn't want to talk to them, so they'd better shut up. This is the first update. Today is the third update. Asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Today is Monday. Especially for recommendation votes. At 1 p.m., monthly votes for 3,900 plus updates. At 7 p.m. the third update. P.S. Thank you to Momo Moshi, Bagel 16, and so many moms for the 10,000 Chidian coins each yesterday. Mwah. Chapter 9:12. Prime Minister Tan and Kai Xingnan were both from scholarly families, so it wasn't that they didn't know the etiquette of attending a concert. It was just that in their hearts they didn't even consider a military arts performance as a concert. To them, this was another social occasion. Since they were going to socialize, talking was unavoidable. Furthermore, it wasn't even time to start yet. Was Xiaoheng saying this was completely disrespectful? Ever since the impeachment, Prime Minister Tan valued his reputation more and more. He couldn't tolerate the slightest bit of contempt or neglect from others. However, today he had been reprimanded by Song Jining, the director of the Institute of High Energy Physics, and then slapped in the face by Hua Xiaoheng, the major general. It was really hard to swallow. His expression darkened and he was about to explode, but Kai Xingnan quickly gave him a look and said quietly, "Uncle, don't make things difficult for cousin." Thinking of his beloved daughter, Tan Guoren, Prime Minister Tan finally let out a long sigh and swallowed his anger. Not long after, General Ji and the others entered and sat down in the front row. Hua Xiaoheng and Hua Guanchen both stood up to greet them. General Ji and the others also greeted Prime Minister Tan and said very kindly and politely, "It's rare for you to come to the performance. It's our honor that your daughter can join our military art troupe. I hope she can continue to shine and bring glory to our nation." "Thank you for your kind words, General Ji. Little darling is a hard-working child and has talent. She has been longing to join the military art troupe this time." As Prime Minister Tan said this, he couldn't help but glance at Hua Xiaoheng. The corners of Song Jining's eyes twitched. Just as she was about to beat Prime Minister Tan's thoughts back, she heard Hua Guanchen chuckle and say, "Prime Minister Tan, you're too kind. Actually, we've been longing for Miss Tan to join the military art troupe. Isn't that right, Xiaoheng?" Song Jining finally understood where Prime Minister Tan got his confidence from. It turned out that someone had given him a reassurance pill. It was really hard to guard against a thief in the family. In front of so many people, it was up to these two old men to be shameless. Song Jining snorted inwardly and was about to retort with a straight face when she saw the lights in the auditorium dim and the performance begin. She could only shut her mouth and enjoy the art troupe's performance with everyone else. It had to be said that this performance was practically Tan Guoren's solo performance. Other than the violin solo and concerto, Tan Guoren was the center of attention even during the chorus and the dance. The TV cameras were on her and the stage lights were on her. When she stands on the stage, all the people become her scenery board. She really plays the violin very well. When she picked up her piano, she only had her own piano in her heart and eyes. The melodious music flowed from her fingertips and reverberated throughout the performance hall. Her skills were exquisite, her emotions were full, and her deeply hidden thoughts were all vividly displayed. She performed even better than when she won an international award in the United States. At the end of the song, the audience was silent for a few minutes before bursting into thunderous applause. Even Song Jining had to admit that although this girl looked a little silly, her zither playing skills were superb. Jinling Bar did not prohibit smoking. Hijichu sat calmly in front of the bar counter, the sleeves of his custom-made olive green shirt rolled up to reveal a low-key but luxurious limited edition watch on his wrist. He held a lighter in one hand as he lit a cigarette and took a slow drag. As he waited for the bartender to make his drink, Hijichu turned around and looked at the large flat-screen TV hanging on the wall of the bar. Because the students had booked the entire place, the bar was much cleaner, and the faintly discernible old Christmas songs became background music. The bar, which was usually crowded with people from all walks of life, was now more elegant. The TV was originally playing a sports program, but when Hijichu saw the Wuxia Empire's national men's soccer team playing, he immediately felt that it was worse than the bartender's blonde hair dyed red. He immediately changed the channel. When he changed the channel, it was actually the news channel. Hijichu turned up the volume. Soon the students on the other side of the bar saw Hijichu. Several students immediately came over to greet him. "Professor He. I didn't think Professor He would actually come. What would you like to drink, Professor He?" "My treat." First, a few boys who wanted to get close to Hijichu ran around to get him food and red wine. Then a few courageous girls also came over. "Professor He, you're only here now?" "Yes, Professor He, if you had come earlier, you would have been able to watch an idol drama." The girl who had just been jealous of Gunyenji was angry. She couldn't stand the sight of the boys circling around Gunyenji like bees to honey. Hijichu didn't say anything and smiled as he took a sip of his cocktail. The girl saw that Hijichu wasn't as cold and distant as usual, so she boldly asked, "Don't you want to know who's the lead in the idol drama?" Hijichu was in a good mood today. He smiled and blew out a smoke ring. He shook his head. "I don't know." Hijichu actually answered. The girl's heart skipped a beat. She immediately said, "It's Gunyenji." She was kissing a man in a luxury car at the entrance of the bar. Everyone saw it, right? She nudged the girl next to her. The girl was a bit afraid of Hijichu. She muttered, "I didn't see it with my own eyes. I heard it from the boys over there. They were at the entrance to pick her up. I heard they saw it with their own eyes." "That's right, I didn't start a rumor." Gunyenji didn't deny it when they were making a fuss. If she didn't deny it, then it was true. Although Hijichu was mentally prepared, he had to admit that he was still panicking. But what could he do? No matter how much he wanted to, he could only endure it until Gunyenji graduated. Hijichu's expression didn't change at all. He coughed and said coldly, "What do you mean by telling me all this? You're telling the teacher about classmates dating? May I ask how old you are?" Hijichu said sarcastically. He turned around and took another sip of his tequila cocktail. The girl who passed the message froze and looked at Hijichu suspiciously. Wasn't there a rumor at school that Hijichu and Gunyenji were in a student-teacher relationship? Was it not? He didn't seem angry at all. The veins on Hijichu's forehead were about to explode. Fortunately, the other girls were quick-witted and quickly said, "That's right, what's wrong with Gunyenji being intimate with her boyfriend? You're such a busybody." As they spoke, they pushed the girl who had been jealous of Gunyenji to the side and began to flatter Professor He. They didn't have to chase after Hijichu, but with Hijichu's status, they wanted to familiarize themselves with him. When they graduated, it would be very useful for finding a job or writing recommendation letters. Everyone wanted to suck up to him, so who would be stupid enough to make him angry? Hijichu's behavior was also very obvious. Other than the girl who had been jealous, Hijichu didn't say a word to anyone else. However, when it came to other students, be it boys or girls, he would talk to them in a pleasant manner. Whether it was about studies, work, or American universities, he would tell them everything he knew without holding anything back. His status in the hearts of the students rose by a few levels. In the past, Hijichu always had an air of superiority about him. He was the famous flower of the Faculty of Law. Now he was gentle and kind. He really had the air of a gentleman, so more students surrounded him. Gunyenji saw Hijichu from afar. She wanted to go over, but seeing that he was quickly surrounded by her classmates, she didn't go over to join in the fun. "Your tequila sunrise." The bartender finished mixing the drink and passed it to Hijichu. When Hijichu turned to accept his cocktail, the news channel he had already tuned to was broadcasting a piece of news. The military art performance is just around the corner, and the military art troupe has delivered a satisfactory performance tonight. The world-renowned violin virtuoso Miss Tan Gurin is also the only daughter of Prime Minister Tan. She joined the military art troupe and gave a stunning performance to the military leaders, cabinet leaders, and parliament. Immediately after, a melodious violin concerto played from the high-quality surround sound speakers. The sports channel only had images of the soccer match earlier, so the volume was off. Hijichu wanted to watch the news, so he turned up the volume. He didn't expect it to be at its loudest. He instinctively looked in Gunyenji's direction. As expected, everyone was attracted by the sound of the television and looked over one by one. On the large television screen, Tan Gurin was wearing a long, sequined purple dress. The neckline was wide open, revealing her snow-white breasts. Her long hair was curled into large curls and swayed passionately as she played the violin. It was a different kind of temptation. Immediately after, the television camera switched to the audience below. Traditionally, the most important people were seated in the first two rows of the stage for this kind of performance. Although Hua Xiaoheng's figure only appeared briefly on the television, Gunyenji still recognized him at first glance. This was the second update. Monthly tickets for 3,900 plus updates had arrived. Today was the third update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly tickets. Today was Monday, especially recommendation votes. Third update at 7 p.m. Chapter 913. The beautifully decorated military hall was no longer as solemn as it was in the past. Instead, it was filled with an exotic charm. Gunyenji watched the scene on TV and was slightly surprised by Tan Gurin's attire, but she didn't spend too much time thinking about it. This kind of person could only make her sad once, but to make her sad a second time? Tanguerin wasn't important enough. She wondered if this was the military arts performance that professor he was supposed to attend. She didn't expect Huaxiao to go as well. She knew that Huaxiaoheng never went to these kinds of performances. In the past, when she was still with him in Sea City, he was either out on a mission or accompanying her at the base on Christmas Eve. Of course, things were different now. Now that she was of age and out of his protection, he would have more time to do his own things. Gunyinji's heart was a mess. She wasn't jealous, nor was she upset. She was just a little lost, really, just a little. Hijichu didn't miss the slightest change in Gunyinji's expression. He also saw Huaxiaoheng on TV, but he wasn't surprised at all. At a time like this, with Huaxiaoheng's status, it was only a matter of time before he showed up, and such events would happen more often in the future. It seemed like Nianji really couldn't get used to it. Hijichu thought about this and felt sad for Gunyinji, but he also felt a sense of relief and joy. He had always felt that Gunyinji and Huaxiaoheng wouldn't be able to break up, but from the looks of it today, it wasn't necessarily impossible. In a split second, Hijichu took the remote control and changed the channel. He said to the bartender, "Play dance music." The bartender informed the bar's DJ to follow Hijichu's instructions and pick some melodious Christmas music. Soon, the middle three songs of Edelweiss were played in the bar, and the lights dimmed, leaving only colorful lights lingering around. Hijichu parted the crowd surrounding him and walked over to the sofa where Gunyinji was sitting. He extended his hand to her. "May I?" Gunyinji looked up at Hijichu in shock. She was so stunned that she couldn't speak. Hijichu smiled. His shimmering almond-shaped eyes were very alluring under the colorful lights. Hijichu bent down and whispered in Gunyinji's ear, "You won't be so rude, will you?" Gunyinji quickly grabbed his hand. "Of course not. Professor you're exaggerating. It's just a dance with everyone." At this time there were already 2s and 3s of students on the dance floor. Everyone was already a master's student, so there was no one who didn't know how to ballroom dance. Hijichu held Gunyinji's hand and put his other hand around her waist to slow dance with her. The movements of the two were surprisingly harmonious. Whether it was the rotation or the staggered steps, it was as if they had coordinated for thousands of times. Gunyinji was also puzzled. Why was she so compatible with Hijichu's dance moves? When she was dancing with Huaxiaoheng, it took a lot of effort to coordinate. Hijichu wrapped his arm around Gunyinji's waist and looked down at her confused expression. He suddenly said, "Actually, I taught you ballroom dancing. Gunyinji, when you were young, when you saw my family holding a ball, you wanted to learn. I taught you personally." The corners of Hijichu's lips curled up bit by bit. "Otherwise, how could we work so well together?" At that time, Gunyinji was short, chubby, and mischievous. She was also restless when dancing and almost stepped on his feet until they were swollen. However, he enjoyed it and didn't care at all. He taught her very carefully until he could teach her. Unfortunately, she left him not long after. Gunyinji frowned and thought about it. "Really? But I don't remember anything at all." The corners of Hijichu's mouth twitched. If she could recover her memory, would there still be a Huaxiaoheng? Of course, he only thought about it in his heart and couldn't say it out loud. This was related to a man's pride. "I'm not in your memory, but you still remember me from your dance moves?" Hijichu said coolly as he led her around again. On the dance floor, the scene of the two embracing and dancing was captured by someone. Soon, Huaxiaoheng's phone vibrated with a notification. He took out his phone and quickly glanced at it. In the end, he saw a photo of Hijichu and Gunyinji dancing together. Not to mention, Gunyinji was dressed up in a mature and elegant manner today. It was a perfect match for Hijichu, who was equally elegant and aloof. If one only looked at the photo, they would be a perfect couple of similar ages. No one would be able to tell that they were actually 10 years apart. This photo was taken by the Special Operations Forces personnel protecting Gunyinji. Otherwise, it wouldn't have reached Huaxiaoheng's phone. Huaxiaoheng quietly turned off his phone. However, he clenched his fist tightly and only relaxed it after a long time. He also didn't expect Hijichu to actually go to Gunyinji's class's Christmas party. Therefore, the clothes and jewelry he picked for Gunyinji today really helped Hijichu. The performance by the military art troupe was very successful this time. For 2 whole hours, Tanguerin came out again and again to bow during the final curtain call. Everyone stood up and applauded enthusiastically. The audience even specially arranged for 2 children to hold large bouquets of lilies to present to her. Tanguerin, who was hugging the lilies, was as beautiful as the lilies in her hands and naturally fragrant. Even Kai Xingnan, who somewhat looked down on her, had to admit that at that moment, Tanguerin's beauty was truly incomparable. She couldn't help but quickly glance at Hua Xiaoheng. However, she saw that he was looking down at his phone and wasn't looking at Tang Guiren on stage. Kai Xingnan's depressed heart slowly rose with an indescribable joy. Fortunately, his flirtatious and talented cousin didn't attract Major General Hua's attention tonight. After the performance ended, Kai Xingnan calmly walked backstage to congratulate Tang Guiren. "Cousin, you played so well today. I felt like I was back in the Golden Hall of Carnegie Mellon in the United States and saw the international award-winning Miss Tan," Kai Xingnan said as she kissed Tang Guiren's cheek. Tang Guiren was also very nervous and excited. She grabbed Kai Xingnan's hand and said repeatedly, "Cousin, are you serious? I really played well today? I'm telling you, I was even more nervous today than when I participated in the international competition. If there was one note wrong, I would definitely jump off the stage on the spot." "How could that be? You played really well." Kai Xingnan encouraged her again before taking Tang Guiren, who had removed her makeup, to the small performance hall next door for the celebration party. Hua Xiaoheng originally wanted to leave, but his father, Hua Guanchen, pulled him back and forced him to talk to General Ji and the others. Hua Xiaoheng had no choice but to be patient and chat with General Ji and the other VIPs. General Ji was also very busy today. After talking to Hua Xiaoheng for a bit, he went to the other side with the VIPs for tea. Hua Xiaoheng didn't follow them and turned to walk out the door. From the corner of his eye, he saw his father, Hua Guanchen, stopping his mother, Song Jining. He didn't know what he was going to do. He frowned and walked over. "Miss Song, do you want to go back with us?" Song Jining couldn't have asked for more. She quickly said, "Yes, I was just about to go." Hua Xiaoheng said to his father, Hua Guanchen dryly, "General Ji and the others are all over there for tea. Shouldn't you go too?" Hua Guanchen really wanted to go, but he had an appointment with Prime Minister Tan. Seeing that they weren't coming, he panicked and saw that Hua Xiaoheng and Song Jining had already walked out of the small recording studio. He quickly chased after them. In the hallway outside, he could only see Hua Xiaoheng and Song Jining's backs. They turned a corner and were about to go out. Hua Guanchen hurried a few steps and was about to call Prime Minister Tan when he saw three people in front of him. It was Prime Minister Tan, Kai Xingnan, and Tang Guiren. Hua Guanchen exhaled deeply and quickly walked in front of Hua Xiaoheng and Song Jining. He said to Prime Minister Tan, "You're finally here. Did something happen?" Kai Xingnan realized that Hua Xiaoheng hadn't left yet and raised her eyebrows in surprise. She had tried to delay Tang Guiren for a while, but she still hadn't succeeded. Hua Guanchen praised Tang Guiren again. At the same time, he said to Hua Xiaoheng, "This is Miss Tan whom I often mention to you. You also know her. Since everyone is free today, why don't we?" Song Jining didn't wait for Hua Xiaoheng to speak. She already put on a smile and interrupted Hua Guanchen. She said to Prime Minister Tan, "Prime Minister Tan, I can testify that General Hua Guanchen has always been full of praise for Miss Tan and can't forget her. Don't worry, General Hua Guanchen and I have long since divorced. If he wants to remarry, I'll raise both hands in approval. If it's Miss Tan, then it'll be an even better match. It'll be even better." It was the third watch. Today was the third watch, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Today was Monday, so I'm especially looking for recommendation votes. Mwah, everyone. P.S. Don't worry, everyone. I'm your biological mother. Chapter 9:14. After Song Jining finished speaking, everyone except for Hua Xiaoheng, who remained calm and collected, looked as if they had been struck by lightning. Hua Guanchen could already feel a sweet, fishy taste in his throat. He almost vomited blood on the spot. He glared at Song Jining angrily and clenched his fists. He didn't know how much he had to pay to not act rashly. Prime Minister Tan and Kai Xingnan were dumbstruck. The two people who had always been eloquent and quick-witted in front of others couldn't find a single thing to retort. Tang Guiren was the only one who seemed to be scared out of her wits and couldn't think straight. She couldn't care less about being reserved and avoiding suspicion. Trembling with fear, she asked Hua Xiaoheng, "Major General Hua, you think so too? But I don't." Her eyes were brimming with tears, and her frail body was trembling. She looked like a frightened rabbit. Hua Xiaoheng still looked calm and collected. He stared straight ahead and didn't speak. Song Jining snorted and looked at Tang Guiren sympathetically. "Miss, why don't you grow up? Why are you asking the son about the father's business?" She then said to Prime Minister Tan, "You and your husband are really too much. I told your wife last time that there was something wrong with your upbringing, but she didn't believe me. Look at what you've raised, such a good daughter. I'll leave it here. That's all for today. If I hear something like that again, Prime Minister Tan, then I'm sorry. Song Jining raised her chin slightly and looked disdainful. Never underestimate the extent to which a mother can go for her children. If you don't understand, go back and ask your wife. I'm sure she understands what I mean. Goodbye. After Song Jining finished speaking, she walked away. Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything and quickly followed her out of the military auditorium with Song Jining. Looking at the backs of the mother and son, Tan Guiran finally knew that her beautiful dream had been shattered into pieces. She would never be happy in this lifetime. Covering her face, tears dripped from between her fingers and wet the front of her shirt. Kai Xingnan was happy and sad at the same time. Her emotions were very complicated as she hugged Tan Guiran's shoulder and said firmly, "Cousin, don't cry. It's okay. It's definitely okay." Prime Minister Tan watched as the apple of his eye sobbed. His heart ached so much that he wanted nothing more than to strangle Hua Guanchen to death. He took a step forward and blocked Hua Guanchen's way. He lowered his voice and said, "What does Director Song mean? I didn't offend her, did I? This is what you meant by no problem? Shouldn't General Hua give us an explanation?" Hua Guanchen was so angry at Song Jining that he gritted his teeth. He couldn't be bothered to play along with the Tans now. He didn't expect Song Jining to have such a bad impression of Tan Guiran and react so strongly. Naturally, he didn't dare to play matchmaker anymore. Straightening his uniform, Hua Guanchen said coldly, "Nothing forcibly done won't be sweet. Since we can't come to an agreement, then forget it. Goodbye." With that, he hurriedly left the military hall. All three members of the Hua family had left, leaving only Prime Minister Tan Guiran and Kai Xingnan in the hallway. "Uncle, are you giving up just like that?" Kai Xingnan asked tentatively. "Why don't we just forget it? The Hua family isn't an ordinary family. It's best if we don't offend them." Prime Minister Tan really couldn't take this lying down. He grinned and his smile was almost ferocious. "That's fine too. Unless he never gets married for the rest of his life, then I'll respect him." Kai Xingnan's heart trembled and she didn't reply. It was a winter night in the imperial capital, and the wind was biting cold. The night sky was illuminated by the streetlights with a dim yellow glow. Thick layers of clouds overlapped and pressed heavily on top of their heads. Hua Xiaoheng asked Fan Jian to drive the car over as he said to Song Jining, "I'll take you back." Song Jining had driven her own car over. She originally wanted to drive back herself, but then she thought it would be good to talk to her son. She nodded. "My car is still in the parking lot. Find someone to drive it back for me." As she spoke, she tossed the car keys to Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng caught it. After getting into the car, he casually handed it to Fan Jian. "Drive Director Song's car back to the Institute of High Energy Technology when you have time." "Yes, Chief." Fan Jian took the car keys and placed them in the small hidden compartment in front of the car. Hua Xiaoheng and Song Jining sat on the left and right of the car. The car drove steadily and left the military auditorium, heading in the direction of the Institute of High Energy Physics. Song Jining had just bought a house and it was still being renovated. It couldn't be lived in, so she was still living in the dormitory of the Institute of High Energy Physics. The two of them sat in the back seat and didn't speak at first. After the car drove for a while, Song Jining crossed her arms and glanced at Hua Xiaoheng. "Xiaoheng, you're not young anymore. No wonder your father is planning for your marriage." She could tell that this son of hers was in high demand. Everyone was eyeing him covetously and fighting for him. "Hua Xiaoheng, why aren't you saying anything?" Song Jining sighed softly and her voice softened. "How should I put it? I understand your father's intentions. He just wants to find a girl who matches your family background to be your wife." Hua Xiaoheng finally scoffed and didn't comment. "Don't disagree." Song Jining turned to the side. "I'm telling you, I also have a request. Don't think that only your father has a request. What request do you have?" Hua Xiaoheng's voice was very calm. "That's new." Song Jining had never discussed this issue with Hua Xiaoheng openly. Today she was probably stimulated by Hua Guanchen and Prime Minister Tan's plan, so she was in the mood to share her thoughts. "Of course I have a request," Song Jining said enthusiastically. "To be honest, it's important to match your family background and I don't oppose it. But I've always thought that matching your family background is a way to make up for the lack of quality in the person. To borrow a saying from the internet, I call this situation a lack of quality in family background to make up for it. If the person's quality is strong enough, why would there be a need for a matching family background? She can hold up the family background on her own." After a pause, Song Jining further comforted Hua Xiaoheng's heart. The person you're going to spend the rest of your life with is that person, not her family. Never put the cart before the horse. Wu Xiaoheng thought this was a little interesting. He turned around and looked at Song Jining for a while. He smiled and said, "Then your requirements are even higher than General Hua's." Of course. Song Jining didn't hide her bias at all. Your mother doesn't have any other requirements. Family background and appearance aren't important. What's important is IQ and character. To say the least, bad character can be remedied with nurturing, but innate factors like IQ are useless no matter what. You have to think clearly. If the mother's IQ is low, the child can't be saved. Hu Xiaoheng, he curled his lips and said half-jokingly, "Then I'll have to ask Miss Song to help me check. Anyone who wants to be your daughter-in-law must pass your IQ test?" "Sure." Song Jining decided. "I'll come up with a set of questions when I get back. 100 is the full score. Anyone below 90 is out." Hu Xiaoheng, he shifted his position uncomfortably. He thought that with his mother's obsession with scientific research, she might really be able to do such a thing. He hesitated for a while, then lowered his voice and said, "The test is pretty good. Which aspect do you want to focus on?" Hu Xiaoheng was worried that a certain someone would punch him in the chest with her small fists if they were all questions related to high-energy physics and biochemical medicine. Song Jining held back her laughter and said seriously, "I haven't decided which aspect yet. However, I've been quite busy recently. I'm worried that I won't be able to find time to come up with the test questions and delay your marriage. How about this? I'll ask Nianji to help me come up with the questions. You have so many girls around you, but I think she's the only one with an IQ that's off the charts." The corners of Hu Xiaoheng's lips couldn't help but curl up. He smiled and said leisurely, "That's not good, is it? Are you going to openly cheat?" Song Jining deliberately widened her eyes. I didn't say that Nianji would take the test." "How is that cheating?" Hu Xiaoheng, he had been tricked by Miss Song. Seeing Hu Xiaoheng reveal a rare expression of grievance and awkwardness, Song Jining laughed happily. Fan Jian, who was sitting in the front row, heard everything clearly. He couldn't help but sigh. This was a real mother, a proper real mother who made fun of her son. After laughing enough, Song Jining finally held Hu Xiaoheng's hand and said gently, "Xiaoheng, Mom didn't participate in your childhood and also missed your adolescence. Mom doesn't want to make the same mistake again." Hu Xiaoheng wasn't used to such tender moments. He coughed lightly and discreetly removed his hand from Song Jining's grasp. He changed the topic. "Since you said that today, Prime Minister Tan probably won't try anything funny. However, I'm afraid General Hu won't let you go so easily." Song Jining's seat was next to Hu Guanchen's today, so it was obvious what he was thinking. Hu Xiaoheng didn't want his parents to get back together at all, but this was ultimately a matter between his parents. He wouldn't voice his opinion and add to his parents' troubles. Song Jining was least afraid of Hu Guanchen. She turned her head and frowned. "It's definitely not possible between your father and me. Xiaoheng, will you blame me?" Hu Xiaoheng quickly raised his hands. "Miss Song, I won't interfere with you too. Can you not interfere with me too?" This meant that he was going to wash his hands of the matter. Because Song Jining was worried about her son, she still treated Hu Guanchen well on the surface. At least, she had never publicly disrespected him like she did today. Today, Song Jining discovered that Hu Guanchen didn't care about her son and her wishes as a mother. He insisted on sending her son and that silly girl, Tan Gurin, together. Her father, Song Haichuan, had been a child prodigy since he was young. She herself had been a genius all her life. Although her son wasn't a genius, he was precocious and even more brilliant than a genius. He knew to hide his abilities and bide his time. She didn't want to think about her son's next generation and have his IQ drop. The best thing that parents can leave their children is not wealth or status, but intelligence. Song Jining pointed at her own head. "Think carefully. Don't be led astray by your father's twisted logic." In Jinling Bar, the Christmas dance party for the first-year Master of Law Class 1 had already reached its climax. The ballroom music had already been switched out, and the DJ was now playing a powerful and rhythmic Christmas song. Men and women danced on the dance floor as if they were crazy. Yijichu had come down a long time ago. He had no interest in the energetic dance of these young people. Gunyanji didn't dance either. It wasn't that she wasn't interested, but that she didn't know how to dance. She knew a bit of Latin ballroom, but she didn't really know how to dance. Of course, the main thing was that she couldn't dance in the clothes she was wearing today. How embarrassing. She only danced a few times with Hijichu. After that, Hijichu sat on the side and talked to her. Someone came to ask Gunyenji to dance, but Hijichu looked up and saw the person leave. Hijichu had drunk a lot today, but he wasn't that drunk. Seeing Gunyenji sitting on the side, bored, he couldn't help asking her, "Do you want to go back?" Gunyenji nodded and looked down to take out her phone to send Hua Xiaoheng a message. Hijichu had already stood up. "Let's go. I'll take you back to the dormitory." As soon as he reached out, Gunyenji smelled the strong smell of alcohol. She couldn't help but stay silent. Putting away her phone, she said, "Professor He, let me drive." It was common sense not to drink and drive. It wouldn't be too late to call Hua Xiaoheng when she got back to school. Hijichu shook his head. "I'm fine. Let's go." He led the way. Gunyenji was worried about Hijichu, so she hurriedly said something to a classmate and followed. Not long after they left the bar, someone made a phone call to someone outside. Gunyenji got into Hijichu's car, got into the driver's seat and started the car. Hijichu sat in the front passenger seat and put his hand across his forehead. He popped a pill into his mouth and said dryly, "I have sobriety pills. I'm fine." Gunyenji wrinkled her little nose. "I'll open the window for a bit. I smell alcohol." Hijichu smiled and waited for the alcohol in the car to dissipate. He was already sober, so he said to Gunyenji, "Let me drive." "I'm fine." Gunyenji refused. "I'm good at driving too. Don't worry." She drove slowly anyway, so she wasn't afraid. Hijichu saw that she was insistent, so he didn't say anything else. He sat quietly to the side and watched as she stepped on the gas and drove onto the street. There was almost no traffic on the streets of the imperial capital late at night. Gunyenji drove at a moderate speed, and the entire journey was smooth. She was in a good mood, so she turned on the car stereo and found some music to listen to. Hijichu smiled as he looked ahead. He wanted nothing more than to drive like this forever all the way to his home, but after a while Hijichu straightened in his seat and looked at the rearview mirror. He whispered to Gunyenji, "Someone's following us." Gunyenji also glanced at the rearview mirror and saw that there were two cars that looked like modified sports cars. "We're not far from school. Turn this way and we'll be there in 10 minutes. Gunyenji looked at the navigation system and said calmly. She suddenly stepped on the gas pedal. Although Hijichu's car wasn't a modified sports car, no sports car could keep up with him when he got cocky. Gunyenji stepped on the gas pedal, and the car sped up like an arrow released from a bow. The cars behind were left further and further behind, and gradually became two small black dots. Gunyenji breathed a sigh of relief. She was about to slow down, so she stretched her foot to step on the brakes. Once, twice, thrice, sweat broke out on her forehead. Professor He, The brakes seemed to have malfunctioned. This was the first chapter with 4,000 words, and today was the third chapter. Asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. My friends were amazing yesterday. They actually broke 4,200 votes in one go. Monthly votes 4,200 plus chapters at 1 p.m. Third chapter at 7 p.m. P.S. Thank you to the leader Bagel16 for tipping 20,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Mwah. Chapter 9:15. Hijichu's eyes flew open and he looked straight ahead. Brake malfunction? His voice was calm, sarcastic, and even a bit disdainful. Gunyenji glanced at Hijichu, her palms beginning to sweat. However, Hijichu's calm expression infected her and she quickly calmed down. She gripped the steering wheel tightly and didn't try to step on the brake or accelerator again. She tried not to collide with any other cars. Fortunately, there weren't many cars on the street. Otherwise, it would be difficult to guarantee that they wouldn't collide with other cars. What do we do? Professor He, we're on the street? Gunyenji's eyes sparkled as her mind raced to find the best route from the car's navigation system. She had to avoid the crowds and cars while also ensuring she could safely escape. She really wanted to call Hua Xiaoheng, but he was attending the military arts performance. He should have turned off his phone at this time so calling would be useless. Also, couldn't she escape on her own? She had survived the deserted German Alps. This was the downtown area of the imperial capital of the Wuxia Empire. It couldn't be more dangerous than that. Anyway, as long as she didn't continue to step on the accelerator and avoided other cars, then drove to the deserted suburbs, the car would gradually slow down and they could jump out. Gunyenji turned on the flashing lights to indicate that there was a problem with the car and told the cars behind to keep their distance. She looked at the navigation system and said to Hijichu, "We can turn onto this side road. It's more deserted there. There's a small river about a mile away." If the car was still going very fast, they could consider driving into the river and using a hammer to smash the window open to escape. An escape hammer was a necessary tool in the car. Hijichu turned to look at her strangely. Nianji, aren't you afraid at all? Gu Nianji nodded. I'm afraid. But what's the use of being afraid? It's not like it can save my life. If you're afraid, think about how to save yourself. I've been in more dangerous situations than this in the Alps. What's the point? She suddenly stopped talking and saw Hijichu looking at her from the corner of her eye. Tears seemed to flash across his shimmering, sultry eyes. Gu Nianji didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Professor He, what's wrong? Don't tell me you're scared, silly. Hijichu came back to his senses and looked ahead. He said aloofly, I thought you would have a psychological barrier after experiencing such a car accident. He knew that Hua Xiaoheng had rescued Gu Nianji from a serious car accident. He also knew that Gu Nianji had suffered a huge shock and lost her memory. Gu Nianji, you think too much. How many years has it been? Hua Xiao has long cured my psychological illness, with a 10-kilometer cross-country weight-bearing run. Besides, shouldn't you be thinking about how to inform the police? Gu Nianji thought Hijichu's brain had gone haywire. To talk about psychological problems at a time like this? Looks like I really need to thank Hua Xiaoheng. Hijichu muttered. He lowered his eyes in thought and snorted. Are you sure you want to call the police? Why not? Gu Nianji was even more confused. Shouldn't we call 110 to find the traffic police for this kind of thing? Hijichu crossed his arms and said calmly, use your brain. Think about it carefully before you decide if you should call. Gu Nianji, Professor He, shouldn't that be the first reaction for this kind of thing? Gu Nianji was confused. The brakes don't work and it's a busy city. Shouldn't we call the police and wait for the car to crash? Yes, that should be the first reaction. That's why you fell into a trap. Hijichu looked at her from the corner of his eyes and suddenly reached out to help her turn the steering wheel to the side. Gu Nianji realized that she had been driving against the white line. She quickly focused her attention on the road ahead and thought about Hijichu's words. She said thoughtfully, okay, if we shouldn't call the police, then why? You can think of it this way. What did the other party want to do by breaking my brakes? Murder? Gu Nianji said tentatively. She blushed when she heard Hijichu's snort and immediately said, no, this isn't a big downhill or a highway. Even if we hit the curb now and force the car to stop, it won't be life-threatening. Okay, that's interesting. Then what? Then they aren't trying to murder you, but why would they break your brakes? Hijichu glanced at her. Yes, they broke the brakes so you could call the police. Gu Nianji, she seemed to understand. Under normal circumstances, if the brakes were broken, they would have to call the police whether they hit the curb or crashed into another car to stop. The other party wants us to call the police. However, the other party is going through all this trouble not to give the police a chance to save us, but... Gu Nianji seemed to remember something and her face paled. That's a trap. Once we call the police, we'll walk right into the trap. Hijichu nodded with satisfaction. You're worth teaching. He was about to explain further when his eyes flashed and he saw the flashing police lights in the rearview mirror. He said dryly, look, they're here even if you don't call the police. They're obviously trying to set us up. Gu Nianji looked up at the rearview mirror and was shocked to see a series of police cars appear behind them. They were flashing their lights and locked onto their car, trying to force them to stop. Gu Nianji was extremely nervous and turned the steering wheel into the small road. The navigation system showed that there was a small road that led to a small river not far away. Are you scared? Hijichu tilted his head to look at her. If you're not scared, then switch seats with me. I'll drive. Gu Nianji glared at Hijichu and couldn't help shouting, are you crazy? The brakes are broken and there are police behind us. You want to switch seats with me now? Hijichu held the steering wheel and smiled. Look, the brakes are broken and we can't continue to step on the accelerator. When the police catch up, we'll be in trouble. What trouble? Gu Nianji refused. Professor He, you drank alcohol. It's trouble for you to drive. I'm fine. I took some sobriety pills and am fine now. Hijichu didn't want to reason with Gu Nianji anymore. He held the steering wheel with one hand and unbuckled Gu Nianji's seatbelt with the other. He nodded at her. I'll count to 3. Make room for me. I'll sit over there. Gu Nianji suddenly realized that Hijichu, who looked thin and tall, had shockingly strong hands. She was completely immobilized by him. She could only nod and murmur, I'm also crazy. As she spoke, she heard Hijichu count to 3. She bent over and stood up. Hijichu sat sideways behind her and held the steering wheel with both hands before moving his legs over. Gunyenji quickly climbed into the passenger seat and put on her seatbelt with trembling hands. Hijichu turned to look at Gunyenji and said, "Nyenji, promise me that you won't tell anyone about anything you see or any equipment, including He Xiaoheng. Can you promise?" Gunyenji pursed her lips. "Professor He, do you have a reason?" Hijichu looked down. "My car and I don't want to be lab rats." Gunyenji understood and blinked in surprise. Hijichu smiled at her and said softly, "Thank you." He reached out and fumbled under the steering wheel. He found a button and pressed it. A small LED screen rose up from under the steering wheel. It looked like a control screen. Hijichu said dryly, "The person who broke my brakes definitely doesn't know that my car has two systems." As he spoke, he placed his finger into the groove of the LED control screen and used his fingerprint to unlock the second system. The car let out a low roar, and the engine even stopped for a moment before it suddenly started again. Even Gunyenji could clearly feel that the entire performance of the car was different. It was quieter and more comfortable. She couldn't even feel the little bit of turbulence from before. Hijichu stepped on the brakes and it was ready to be used. He slammed his foot on the accelerator and drove forward at high speed. From the rearview mirror, Gunyenji could vaguely see that the police car they had just shaken off had caught up. Hijichu pursed his thin lips and quickly pressed a few times on the LED control panel to switch to video mode. Gunyenji looked over and was shocked to find that it was like a car recorder. The difference was that this recorder recorded the entire car at all times, including under the car. On the LED control screen she could clearly see two perverted men crawling under the car and destroying the brake system. Then they took out 2 bags of white powder and stuck it tightly to the car's chassis with black tape. Gunyenji's mind was instantly filled with thousands of mythical beasts galloping. This move was truly vicious. This is the second update, and the monthly votes have been delivered to 4,200. Today is the third update, and I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. 7 p.m. the third update. P.S. I corrected some typos in the chapter this morning. I was worried that everyone would be anxious, so I posted it as soon as I finished writing and didn't catch bugs. Chapter 9:16. Gunyenji was now able to think through the entire incident in a coherent manner. First of all, the other party had predicted their reactions almost perfectly. They seemed to have predicted that Gunyenji wouldn't look for He Xiaoheng, because He Xiaoheng was watching a performance in the military auditorium. Under normal circumstances, his phone should be turned off. Under normal circumstances, she should be looking for the police, especially the traffic police. As long as she called the traffic police and got them to rescue her, the car would fall into the hands of the police, and the white powder under the car would undoubtedly be discovered by the police. Getting into this kind of trouble on the eve of her graduation would be like pouring dirty water on herself. Even if she could clear her name, it would still leave traces. She was a law major, so what future did she have? Not to mention her, even Hijichu would probably have to retire from the legal world, especially since the other party had 2 packets of white powder on them. She and Hijichu each had 1 packet. In other words, the other party had also predicted that she would get into Hijichu's car. Gunyenji couldn't help but sneer. He Xiaoheng had just sent Song Jining to the entrance of the Institute of High-Energy Physics when he heard his phone ring. He answered the call with his Bluetooth headset and asked simply, "What happened?" It was the Special Operations Forces member who had been following Gunyenji. The person's voice was a bit anxious through the Bluetooth headset. "He Xiao, Miss Gu just got into Hijichu's car and was chased by the police. Should we chase after them?" He Xiaoheng was slightly taken aback. Why are they being chased by the police? Wait. He immediately switched to Gunyenji's phone number and called her. Gunyenji heard He Xiaoheng's special ringtone and quickly picked up. She said nervously, "He Xiao? The performance is over?" He Xiaoheng was speechless. He suddenly felt a bit guilty. He replied. "What happened? Why are the police chasing you?" Gunyenji sighed in relief. "You know? That's great, He Xiao. It's like this." Gunyenji quickly explained the predicament they were facing and finally said, "We're in a difficult position now. Someone probably tampered with the car, so we don't dare to let the police catch up." She restrained herself from mentioning the 2 systems in Hijichu's car, as well as the video recorded on the omnidirectional video recorder. She only mentioned the part of what Hijichu had asked her to deduce. Anyway, when He Xiaoheng and the others searched the car, they would find the 2 packets of white powder stuck to the bottom of the car. Hua Xiaoheng took out his phone and turned on the GPS. He quickly found Gu Nianji's location and sent the coordinates to Zhao Liangzi. He texted him, "This area is within a 5-mile radius. Send the Special Operations Forces to seal it off as a special situation." Zhao Liangzi received the news and immediately took action. First, they notified the Imperial Capital Police Headquarters and obtained authorization from them to lock down the area within a 5-mile radius of the coordinates that Gu Nianji had sent. Then they sent out the Special Operations Forces Domestic Enforcement Team. In the country they used the identity of Special Forces as a cover. All of them wore hoods that covered their faces, revealing only a pair of eyes. They also wore night vision goggles. They could be considered armed to the teeth. Even if they were secretly photographed, they would definitely not be able to tell who was who. Because Hua Xiaoheng was close to the place and it was the weekend, he temporarily acted as the commander and ordered Fan Jian to drive there immediately. The Special Operations Forces Enforcement Team sat in an armed patrol car and quickly rushed to the destination with the authorization from the police headquarters that Zhao Liangzi had sent over. At this time the police cars were almost at Gu Nianji's location. Yijichu parked the car by the river. The wheels sank deep into the mud by the shore. This explained how a car with broken brakes could stop. He had already put away the second system. The system in the car returned to normal. Other than Gu Nianji, no one knew the true condition of the car. Gu Nianji got out of the car and waited by the river for a while. She felt a little cold. The coat she wore was cashmere. It was light and stylish. It was fine to wear outdoors for a short period of time, but it wouldn't keep her warm for long. In addition, the Dior dress she wore was a spring style and didn't have much wool. She began to shiver after a while. Her feet were numb from the cold, and her lungs ached from the cold air when she breathed. Yijichu also only wore a mid-length cashmere coat and a Burberry cashmere scarf around his neck. With the light from the car lights, he caught a glimpse of Gu Nianji's snow-white face and bloodless lips. Yijichu untied his scarf and wrapped it around Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji quickly refused. "Professor He, I'm not cold. You can put it on yourself." Yijichu grabbed her hand and held it in his. "Your hand is already cold. How can you say it's not cold?" As he spoke, he untied his coat and wrapped it around Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji wanted to refuse, but his embrace was really warm. Inside the coat that he had just unbuttoned, there was steam rising, and there was a very pleasant smell. It was not the fragrance of flowers, nor was it a man's perfume. It could be the shower gel he used, or it could be his own clean and refreshing smell. This scent was unexpectedly familiar. Gu Nianji closed her eyes and didn't refuse anymore. She was really cold. Why wasn't Hua Xiaoheng here yet? At this time, the Special Operations Forces Enforcement Team was outflanking them. The police didn't have the specific coordinates. When they arrived, they discovered they couldn't get in. A soldier wearing night vision goggles and a hood walked out of the darkness with a semi-automatic rifle. He gestured for them to turn back. "This place has been locked down. You can't go in." "Why?" A police officer jumped out of the police car. "We received a tip-off that there was a big crocodile here. We chased it for a long time to get here. This is the authorization letter from your police headquarters." The man shook his hand and showed them a printed authorization letter. "Step back. If you come any closer, you'll be violating military orders." The man's voice wasn't loud, but his unhurried tone was oppressive. The police officer looked at the authorization a few times and was unwilling to give up. He took out his phone and called headquarters. When he confirmed that it was indeed an order from headquarters, he glared at the man and pointed. "I'll remember you. When are you guys leaving? Don't interfere with our official duties." The man ignored him and only aimed his gun at him. The police also had guns, but how could a small pistol compare to a semi-automatic rifle? These people were tall and burly. One look and you could tell they weren't easy to deal with. There was no other way. The police officer looked curiously in the direction that had been locked down and waved his hand. "Go back and check the tip-off number." The police cars roared and left. Only the police lights seemed to remain on his retinas. When Hua Xiaoheng arrived in Fan Jian's car, he saw that the Special Operations Forces Enforcement Team had already locked down the area. The police hadn't been able to enter in time. He nodded slightly and put on his night vision goggles. He got out of the car and walked in. He didn't walk far on the dirt road. After turning a corner, the view in front of him suddenly widened. At this time, the thick clouds in the sky had already dispersed. The sky was filled with twinkling stars. It was a vast plain with no end in sight. Not far away, a small river flowed quietly. The bright moonlight shone on the water, causing it to sparkle. A car plunged into the mud by the river. A man and a woman stood next to the car, hugging each other. It was as beautiful as a silhouette in an oil painting. This is the third chapter. Today is still the third chapter. Please recommend and vote. P.S. The previous chapters have also been revised. Some have corrected typos and some have changed some details. If you have time, you should notice some differences when you read it from the beginning. Chapter 9:17. Hua Xiaoheng stopped abruptly and didn't continue forward. Looking at the scene in front of him, a poem suddenly appeared in his mind. The stars hang over the vast plains, and the moon surges over the great river. He then thought of a few lines from the Book of Odes. Pass by the osprey in the state of the river. A fair lady is the lover of a gentleman. His fingers moved and he took out a cigarette from his pocket. He lowered his head and closed his hands slightly. The lighter flashed and he lit the cigarette in his hand. He took a slow puff. The flame between his fingers flickered in the dark night. Yijichu saw a flash of light from the corner of his eye. He quietly looked up and saw a tall figure standing not far away. He held a cigarette in his hand and silently looked over. He didn't expect Hua Xiaoheng to come in person. Yijichu immediately pressed the self-destruct button on the car key in his hand and calmly destroyed the second system in the car. The engine of the car that was stuck in the mud had long since died, and the self-destruct mechanism had silently twisted the two systems into a ball. Even if the most powerful mechanic dismantled the car, they would not be able to tell that there used to be two systems here. Yijichu nodded at Hua Xiaoheng and let go of Gun Yanji. He took a step back, took off his coat and draped it over Gun Yanji. Gun Yanji sensed something was wrong and followed Yijichu's gaze. The tall, unmoving figure not far away was Hua Xiaoheng. Gun Yanji restrained herself. Her eyes flashed quietly but she didn't walk over. Hua Xiaoheng looked away and half-turned to call the people behind him. Go, find out what's going on with that car. The mechanical experts, criminal investigation experts, and intelligence experts of the Special Operations Forces immediately walked over to the car that was stuck in the mud. Hua Xiaoheng followed behind them and arrived in front of Yijichu and Gun Yanji. Gun Yanji's little face was as pale as snow, and her lips were as pale as a lotus under the moonlight. The tip of her nose was slightly red, and it was obvious that she was freezing. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at her and looked at Yijichu. What happened? Do you have any clues? Yijichu shook his head and said coldly, unexpected disaster. I have no idea what happened. But did you encounter the police on your way here? I did. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. The police also have a lot of problems. You have to be mentally prepared. I'm afraid they won't stop so easily. Gun Yanji pursed her lips and tightened her coat around her. Taking a deep breath, she said, we were chased by a police car. They should know our license plate number. The moment the traffic police checked the license plate, they knew who the car belonged to. Therefore, even though Hua Xiaoheng had sent the Special Operations Forces to stop the police who had received the tip-off would not let the matter rest. Yijichu said sarcastically, of course. They should be investigating by now. What do you want to do? Hua Xiaoheng held a cigarette in one hand and put the other in his trouser pocket. He was wearing an overcoat made of military wool, and underneath it was the uniform he wore when he attended the military performance. It was made of thick wool so it wasn't cold at all. His fingers twitched when he saw Gun Yanji's pale face, but he resisted the urge to feel her forehead temperature. A gust of cold wind blew and Gun Yanji shivered. Hua Xiaoheng threw away the cigarette in his hand. I'll get Fan Jian to send you back first. He called Fan Jian over through his Bluetooth headset. Drive the car over and send them out first. Make sure to take the other road. The worker with the scanning equipment discovered something under the car. He quickly put on his gloves and climbed down from the raised back of the car. He successfully removed the 2 packets of white powder. Gun Yanji had only seen the 2 packets of white powder on video. She didn't think it was a big deal at the time. Now that he saw the 2 packages, his breathing almost stopped for a moment. Each packet weighed 2 kilograms, so 2 packets weighed 4 kilograms. It was enough for them to sit in jail for a long time. There are fingerprints on them. We'll investigate after we collect them. Hua Xiaoheng waved his hand to dismiss his men. He had already received a secret report that the car was already destroyed beyond recognition. There was no need to investigate further. We can't stay too long. Yijichu turned to look at Gun Yanji. Let's go. Hua Xiaoheng was here on official business, so it wasn't appropriate for him to have too much contact with Gun Yanji. Their gazes met for a moment under the night sky, and then they looked away. Gunyenji walked up slowly and looked up. Take us back to the parking lot of the bar. What do you want to do? Xiaoheng frowned. Go back quickly. I'll take care of this. Gunyenji shook her head and chuckled. We want to go back to the parking lot of the bar and report that the police car was stolen. Otherwise, this basin of dirty water would still have a follow-up. Hijichu understood what Gunyenji meant and was slightly moved. This was all for his own good. The car was his. If Gunyenji hadn't been caught by the police in the car accident, the consequences would have had nothing to do with her. But she didn't stand by and watch. Xiaoheng regained his expressionless composure. He glanced at the car and said, the windows are professionally shielded from light. The driver's face shouldn't have been captured. It's still feasible to report that the police car was stolen. He agreed with Gunyenji's idea. That's why we have to go back and call the police. Gunyenji shivered again. It was so cold that even her smile was frozen. What if the parking lot had surveillance? Hijichu said slowly. Wouldn't you be slapping yourself in the face if you called the police like that? Gunyenji winked at Hijichu slyly. How could that be? I bet the cameras in the bar's parking lot must have been broken today. Hijichu thought about the two people who had tampered with his car and immediately understood. A faint smile appeared on his cold face. Yes, definitely. The three of them didn't say anything else. He and Gunyenji got into Fan Jian's car and drove off in another direction. It wasn't far from Bar Jinling, so it only took them 10 minutes to make a detour. Knowing their plan, Fan Jian purposely chose a place where the cameras couldn't capture them and finally sent them safely to the street. Gunyenji and Hijichu got out of the car and went to a supermarket to kill 5 minutes. Then they walked to the parking lot of Bar Jinling. The bar was still brightly lit. The dance hadn't ended yet. The two of them walked to the parking lot and looked around before Hijichu picked up his phone to call the police. 5 minutes later, a local police car drove over with flashing lights and stopped in front of Bar Jinling. Hijichu stood calmly in the parking lot and said to the traffic police officer who had come to collect information, "My car has been here since 6 p.m., but it's gone now." Gone? The traffic policeman scratched his head. The person who made the police report had an extraordinary bearing and was handsome. Although he was only wearing a narrow gray pinstripe suit, his every movement was extraordinary. One look and one could tell that he was either rich or noble. The car he said had been stolen was a famous luxury Bentley. How about this? There are usually cameras in the parking lot of bars. We'll know once we get them. The traffic police officer searched the license plate number Hijichu had mentioned in his system. It matched their records. The owner was indeed Hijichu. The owner of Bar Jinling panicked when he heard that a luxury car had been lost in his parking lot. He quickly asked someone to bring the parking lot camera records for the police to see. However, the person on duty said with a sad face, "Boss, the parking lot camera was broken a few days ago. We requested to replace it, but you haven't approved it yet." The owner was extremely embarrassed and yelled, "How could you not remind me of such an important matter? Dereliction of duty? Don't even think about getting a cent of this year's year-end bonus." Hijichu looked at the owner coldly as he pushed all the blame to the person on duty. He shook his head slightly and said to the traffic police, "Then what should we do? Without the camera records, our car was lost for nothing?" "Not necessarily. Your car is too expensive. It shouldn't be hard to find," the traffic police said as he reported Hijichu's report. Not long after, his walkie-talkie rang. Someone wanted him to take the call. The traffic police officer was confused. He didn't know what was going on. He took out his phone and walked to the side to ask, "What is it?" "Boss, I have someone reporting a theft." "What license plate did you say the car was reported missing?" The traffic police repeated the license plate Hijichu had just mentioned and added, "I just checked the system. The owner of the car is indeed this person. He lost his luxury car, so of course he's unhappy." The person on the other end was very surprised and said, "Calm him down. I'll be right there." The traffic police didn't know what was going on, but he still put away the phone and came over with a smile. "Please wait a moment. Our boss will be here soon. Sir, you lost a luxury car and the amount is huge. We will definitely file a case." Hijichu nodded reservedly, but he was unwilling to wait. "I believe in your abilities, but can we go back first? It's too cold and I'm worried that my students won't be able to take it. It'll be troublesome for you if they get sick, right?" Hijichu used both the carrot and the stick, and the traffic police hesitated again. Hijichu was the person who had reported the theft. What reason did he have to detain him? But he had no choice but to listen to his superior. The traffic police was in a difficult position. With a bitter expression, he bowed to He Jichu. "Mr. He, please wait a moment. Our boss will be here soon." He added, "If this lady is cold, you can come to my police car to warm up." "No. No way." Gu Nianji and He Jichu refused almost in unison. The traffic police froze. "I'll warm up in the police car," Gu Nianji pouted. "I didn't break the law. Why would I get in your police car?" If someone secretly took a photo of her sitting in the police car, then edited it and photoshopped it, she would be in unknown trouble again. As the saying went, it was easy to start a rumor, but it was hard to refute it. He Jichu ignored the traffic police and called a taxi over. Fortunately, the traffic police's superior arrived at almost the same time as the taxi. As soon as he got out of the car, the police captain said to He Jichu, "You called the police? When did the car go missing?" He Jichu put his hands in his trouser pockets and shrugged. "I don't know when I lost it. From 6 o'clock this afternoon until now." He looked at his watch with his left hand. 11 o'clock. There were 5 hours in between. The police captain folded his hands behind his back and walked around the parking lot a few times before returning to He Jichu. "To be honest, we received a tip-off that a Bentley had a major transaction today, but we lost it after following it for a long time. The license plate of that car is your car's license plate." He Jichu raised a brow. His expression didn't change. "I see. You mean someone stole my car to commit an illegal act? What does that have to do with us?" Gu Nianji was impatient. She gathered her coat and tugged at He Jichu's collar. "Professor He, I'm freezing." He Jichu reached back to take her hand. It was icy cold. He immediately said, "I'm sorry. We really can't stand the cold. Goodbye." The police captain was about to stop He Jichu when he heard someone call out to him. "Boss, we found the car. It's at Little Chang River. Hurry over." The police captain was overjoyed. He immediately said to He Jichu, "Sorry for the interruption." He then got into his police car and drove towards the Little Changhe River. Gu Nianji and He Jichu got into a taxi and returned to B University. The taxi dropped Gu Nianji off at the bottom of her dorm building. He Jichu got out of the car with her and called the taxi back. Gu Nianji asked, "Why did you come down? Isn't it better to take the taxi all the way back to the professor's building?" He Jichu urged her upstairs. "I'm fine. You go up first. I'm going to smoke." Gu Nianji was freezing. She felt like her nose was about to run. In order to not be rude in front of He Jichu, she turned around and went upstairs. He Jichu quietly smoked a cigarette under the big tree in front of the dorm building. He only returned to the professor's building when he saw Gu Nianji's dorm lights go out. On the other hand, the police only found a nearly totaled Bentley stuck in the mud by the river. "Boss, there's nothing in the car. Someone tampered with the brakes. It doesn't look that simple." A police officer reported their findings to the police captain. Xiaoheng and his team of law enforcement officers were, of course, efficient. They searched the area first and didn't leave behind any clues. The police who came to search the area a second time didn't notice anything at all. However, someone was also suspicious. "Boss, this area seems to have been sealed off tonight." The police captain knew what was going on. "Tow the car away. Have Mr. He come to pick it up tomorrow." Gu Nianji took a hot shower after returning to her dorm before going to bed. However, she still caught a cold. When she woke up the next day, her head was heavy and her feet were light. She had a fever and didn't want to get up. Her temples were swollen with pain. She didn't rest for long before she was shocked by Ma Chichi's knocking on the door. "Nianji, Nianji, look at Weibo. Look at Weibo. Someone is making a big scoop." Gu Nianji's heart skipped a beat. She quickly took out her phone and opened Weibo. She saw that her homepage was filled with photos of a luxury car late at night. Someone posted on the official blog of Peace in the Capital, and claimed that they had captured a large police operation on Christmas Eve. They were chasing a luxury Bentley, and the owner of the luxury car happened to be acquainted with He Jichu, the famous professor of law at B University. They asked Peace in the Capital what had happened. Very quickly, another verified account came out and said that they had received a tip from a police insider. They had sufficient evidence to prove that the Bentley was suspected of transporting drugs. The amount was very large and the nature was extremely serious. He Jichu was also a famous person on Weibo. Not only did he have his own official blog, but he also had his own fan club. Therefore, when this news came out, He Jichu's fan club was the first to explode. This group of Mrs. He's fans all came out and fought with the verified account and the secondary account that leaked the news. It was a bloodbath and their fighting power was off the charts. Gu Nianji quickly glanced at the marketing accounts and fake accounts that were stirring up trouble. She immediately called He Jichu. Professor He, there's indeed someone on Weibo who's stirring things up. Please use your official Weibo account to make a statement. He Jichu had also just woken up. He took out his phone and looked at it when he heard Gu Nianji. He immediately went to the official police blog that he had reported to the police yesterday and said, "Looks like there are clues about my lost car. Please investigate them and see where they got the information. Someone stole my car to commit illegal acts. Not only did they commit theft, drug trafficking, but they also planted evidence and slandered others. I reserve all rights to pursue civil compensation." At the same time, he attacked the verified account and the secondary account that leaked the news. Wait for my lawyer's letter. This was the first chapter of 4,400 words. Today there were 2 chapters asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. The monthly votes should reach 4,500 tomorrow. It would be the 3rd chapter then. The 2nd chapter at 7 p.m. Chapter 9:18. As soon as He Jichu posted on his official Weibo account, his fan club instantly went wild. "Hubby, kiss me. As expected of my husband. Madam will cook delicious food for you tonight. Those irresponsible influencers are too much. How dare they frame my husband? You must be tired of living. Hubby is so handsome. The lawyer's letter is awesome. I want it too." Tens of thousands of reposts and likes flooded Weibo. In addition, the big verified accounts who knew He Jichu's strength also liked and expressed their support. These VIPs were no ordinary VIPs. Among them were the founders of the largest law firms in the Wuxia Empire, directors of foreign law firms branches in the Wuxia Empire, big shots in the financial world, and the richest men in the real estate industry. As soon as these people made their move, the fake reviewers on Weibo immediately disappeared. Mrs. He's fans had won a resounding victory. The official police blog that He Jichu had criticized also came out to clarify that someone had indeed leaked the news, but Mr. He's car had also been reported missing and had been found. They attached the photo of the luxury car stuck in the mud by the river as evidence, stating that the car had been severely damaged and did not have anything that the informant had claimed. Therefore, the police were investigating the truth behind it and would severely punish the person who had started the rumor. It could be said that the police's response on Weibo, as well as the accompanying pictures, had truly turned the situation around. Even passers-by began to side with He Jichu and condemn the marketing accounts that liked to spout nonsense. At this time, the marketing V's small office was in chaos. He held the phone and roared, "King set me up. Didn't you say it was definitely poison? The police are investigating. How did the car get stolen? How would I know? You told me about it. Besides, you also received money. It's a few million." The person on the other side of the phone was a little guilty. "A few million? A few million yen, my brother. Do you think it's worth that much? It's not even enough for my lawyer's fees." The verified user slammed the table and roared, "If I'm sued, just wait for me to drag you out." The other party panicked and hurriedly comforted him, "Don't worry, wait a minute, I'll help you ask." Actually, a lawsuit was not a big deal. Could it be that people were not allowed to speak? You're also revealing information, aren't you? Don't worry, I won't let you suffer for nothing. The president said that if the other party really wants to sue, we'll play with them to the end. You know how powerful the Ishihara Corporation is? Although He Jichu is powerful, that is only in the United States. In the Wuxia Empire, he is not as powerful as the Ishihara Corporation. These Japanese corporations had been operating in the Wuxia Empire for many years and were even more powerful in the early years. In recent years, due to the rise of the Special Operations Forces, they had retracted their claws and teeth and gradually faded out of the Wuxia Empire. But the foundation and connections they left behind were still there, and they could be used to serve the interests of Japan at any time. Only then did the verified account's anger dissipate. He did not want to be in a deadlock with the other party. Peace was the most important thing when doing business. In any case, he would scam whoever paid for it. He would clearly mark the price and not cheat anyone. Besides, he was only spreading the news. It wasn't like he was making something up. The police had indeed taken action last night. This was confirmed news, and he even took a screenshot of the police's Weibo account. With that thought in mind, the verified account marketing changed the topic and began to speak softly again. "Haha, I'm not an inexperienced person. I've been online for so many years and have experienced all sorts of ups and downs, including those celebrities. Wouldn't they be blacklisted as well? I didn't see anyone actually sue me, but everyone said that they would send me a lawyer's letter. Bullsh*T. Do you think I'm scared? That's right, that's right. Brother Da is amazing. We are not afraid of this matter. Hijichu must have bribed the police to cover up for him. If he dares to sue, I have even more information for you. The person on the other end of the phone saw that the verified account marketing had admitted defeat, and his backbone stiffened again. This verified account marketing was known as Brother Da. He had been online for 15 years and had grown from a small water army to the current verified account marketing. He could earn tens of thousands of yuan with a casual repost and promotion of a Weibo post. He could be considered to have a way of making money. With the Ishihara Corporation backing him up, he was indeed not afraid of anyone. Sunday was Christmas. Gunyenji watched Hijichu's fan club fight against the verified account marketing and the secondary account that exposed Hijichu, and she finally got out of bed. She had just finished washing up when she received a call from Hijichu asking her to come over. Gunyenji rushed over without even having breakfast. She knew that it was to discuss last night's incident. When she arrived at Hijichu's suite in the professor's building, she opened the door and entered while looking down at her phone. Hijichu walked out of the bedroom with a frown. Walk properly. Why are you looking at your phone? Gunyenji quickly put her phone away and looked up at Hijichu with a smile. Professor He, you have so many wife fans. Hijichu was speechless. What wife fans? I don't even have a girlfriend. Where would I get a wife? Hijichu looked away and walked into the kitchen to make breakfast. What do you want to eat? Gunyenji looked at the time. It's already noon. I'll have a sandwich and a cup of milk tea. Hijichu was the best at making sandwiches. He had 2 pieces of bread dipped in egg, and Gunyenji's favorite shrimp sandwiches were sandwiched in the middle with mayonnaise. He then cut 2 slices of tomato and a piece of lettuce before rolling them up and placing them on a snow-white bone china plate. Gunyenji's fingers twitched when she saw it. She stopped looking at Weibo and picked up the sandwich with her hands. Hijichu made the same sandwich for himself. Although he didn't like mayonnaise, he was too lazy to make anything else. The 2 of them finished their brunch and began discussing who was behind the scenes to ruin Hijichu and Gunyenji's reputation. However, because they discovered it in time and responded appropriately, Gunyenji was already excluded. Now all the attention on the internet was on Hijichu. Gunyenji was in a good mood. She smiled. Professor He, I really didn't know you had so many fans on Weibo. The other party came here for nothing. They're helping you abuse your fans. Abuse of fans could increase combat effectiveness and cohesion. Hijichu's fan club gained almost 1 million fans overnight, and Hijichu's own official Weibo account was approaching the 10 million mark. Hijichu shook his head. This Weibo account was created to find you. I wanted to close it a long time ago. I don't usually use it. Gunyenji froze. It was when she was in danger in Germany. In order to find her, Hijichu had done many things he wouldn't have done otherwise. Gunyenji knew that Hijichu was actually a very low-key person. He wouldn't reveal himself unless it was absolutely necessary. In the past, he didn't have any social media accounts at all. He only contacted her through phone calls and text messages. Gunyenji's heart softened. It was like eating a freshly baked lava cake. It melted in her mouth and the heat warmed her from head to toe. When she woke up in the morning, she had a slight fever. She struggled to take an antipyretic and lay in bed all morning. Now her fever was completely gone. However, when she heard Hijichu's words, she felt her head heat up again. It was like she had a fever again. Professor He. Gunyenji called him softly. The warmth and gratitude in her eyes were very obvious. Thank you. Hijichu looked up at her. His shimmering, sultry eyes flickered slightly. He reached out to hold Gunyenji's hand. There's no need for thanks between us. No matter what it is, I'll do it for you willingly. Gunyenji looked at Hijichu and nodded firmly. Professor He, I'll help you too. Hijichu was speechless. She didn't understand what he meant at all. Hijichu looked down indifferently and finished the sandwich in his hand in a few bites. He then drank his coffee and wiped his mouth with a napkin. He said coldly, I called you over today to tell you about the case in Japan. The case against the Angel in the World Foundation for illegal donations is progressing well. The Japanese court can't hold on much longer. Really? That's great. Gunyenji's eyes lit up. Her big black eyes were like glass. It was extremely moving. I knew the #1 law firm in America must be amazing. She gave Hijichu a thumbs up. Hijichu curled his lips slightly. All right, don't be in such a hurry to flatter me. But even if we win the case, we won't be able to get that much money back in a short time. I don't care. As long as we win the case, I'll get the money back even if I have to rush 3 meals a day. Why should I donate to this kind of foundation? Do I look like an idiot? Gu Nianji didn't think much of it. She raised her cup of milk tea. When I didn't know Gu Yanran was Japanese, the things she did made me think she was either stupid or vicious. I only realized later that she was both stupid and vicious. She's really hopeless. Hijichu wasn't interested in Gu Yanran and had no intention of expressing his opinion at all. After finishing brunch, Gu Nianji accepted the task of helping Hijichu draft a lawyer's letter. She happily walked out of Hijichu's professor's building. Not far from her, a handsome young man wearing a black double-breasted uniform stood under a big tree. He kept flipping a coin in his hand, and Beethoven's Symphony of Fate was playing in his headphones. The rumbling piano music really sounded like fate was knocking on the door. In his eyes, everything in the world was probability. Flowers bloomed and wilted, the seasons changed, and people passed each other. All of this could be calculated. He stared at Gu Nianji's footsteps and silently calculated in his mind how many more steps she had before she would bump into an oncoming bicycle. On the small road, the boy riding the bicycle turned around and waved to his companions. A few female students walked over from the other side of the road with books in their arms, chatting and laughing. Gu Nianji brushed past these two groups of people. Time was up. The young man threw a coin. Like a butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon rainforest, the Atlantic Ocean had a rainstorm. The coin shone so brilliantly in the midday winter light that it reflected brilliantly into the eyes of a schoolgirl who was holding a book. She squealed and covered her face, then stopped. Her companions surrounded her and asked with concern, "What's wrong?" Gu Nianji happened to walk right next to them. Seeing them suddenly stop, she instinctively stepped to the side. With this one step, the bicycle that was coming from the other side crashed into her waist. Just as they were about to collide, someone on a skateboard suddenly flew past and raised his hand. The boy on the bicycle was instantly knocked to the ground. Sorry. The person on the skateboard quickly slipped away, leaving only a string of apologies. Gu Nianji was still in shock as she stood on the small road. She suddenly realized something and turned around to look at the young man in black. The young man's face was full of regret. He thought to himself, where did this person on a skateboard come from? I missed him just now. It seemed like my calculation wasn't good enough. I still need to modify it to deal with Gu Nianji. He gave Gu Nianji a 90-degree bow, then turned around and left. In this world he alone was enough to be the smartest genius. Gu Nianji didn't deserve to live in this world. This was the second chapter of the chapter. Today there were 2 chapters asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. The monthly votes should reach 4,500 tomorrow. It would be the 3rd chapter then. Chapter 9:19. The youth in a black double-breasted uniform left B University and got into a black Rolls-Royce in front of the school gates to return to the U Mountain Villa area in the imperial capital. U Mountain was quiet but warm in the blue sky and blue clouds of winter. It was a hot spring mountain with large and small springs on the mountain. The geothermal heat was sufficient, so the mountain was still green like spring. Under the shade of pine and cypress, a Japanese building with white walls and black tiles appeared in front of him. The youth pushed open the quaint bamboo fence and walked in. There was a small pond on the left of the courtyard. The water was clear and not frozen, so the geothermal heat was sufficient. On the right was the startled deer stone bowl, and the entire courtyard was designed in the standard Quishan court style. The youth walked to the bottom of the doorstep and changed into brown and black wooden clogs. A middle-aged woman in a lotus-colored koi kimono opened the mahogany door and bowed deeply to him. "Young Master Taro, you're back." "Yes." The youth's voice was clear and had gone through puberty, but it didn't sound rough like an adult man at all. He walked into the house and sat on the floor in the living room. He called out to an old man with white hair and beard who was kneeling behind a small coffee table, "Grandfather." A large cursive Zen character hung on the wall behind the old man, and a pot of freshly planted winter jasmine was placed in the corner of the small coffee table. It was bright yellow, so it should have been cultivated in a greenhouse. The old man smiled at him and put down the ladle he was using to get hot water from the pot. His kneeling posture was very proper. "Taro, I heard you went to B University today?" The youth nodded, "Yes." There was stubbornness on his face. "How was it? Did you see Gu Nianji?" The old man in the same kimono crossed his arms and closed his eyes. "I saw her. The youth didn't say anything else and moved over to make tea for the old man. How was it? Did you succeed? The youth's heart palpitated and he put down the teacup in his hand, unconvinced, almost. So you didn't succeed? The old man opened his eyes, his gaze like lightning. You still insist on your theory of order and chaos? Yes. The youth nodded, his gaze unwavering. The theory of chaos states that everything in the world is disorderly and unpredictable. Even the creation of the universe is accidental. But I don't think so. I think chaos is order and can be summarized and predicted by mathematical algorithms. The old man nodded slightly. And then? Did you prove your algorithm? My algorithm has just been put into practice. There are some deviations, but as long as I modify it, I can still succeed. The young man lowered his head. I hope grandfather will give me another chance. The old man sighed and looked at the winter jasmine next to the coffee table. He muttered, back then your father and Gu Xiangwen went to America to study under the world's greatest physicist. Your father is the genius of our Yamato nation, while Gu Xiangwen is known as the Chinese genius. Unfortunately, your father is still slightly inferior. The young man's face revealed an arrogant expression. Grandfather, I don't think father is worse than Gu Xiangwen. He's just too much of a gentleman. Gu Xiangwen is a villain. No, Gu Xiangwen is not a despicable person. The old man shook his head. He's just too smart. He's so smart that all schemes are useless in front of him. What your father lacks the most is breadth of mind. Back then, my father and Gu Xiangwen took part in the competition at the same time. My father clearly won, but Gu Xiangwen actually said that the questions were wrong. The young man punched the coffee table angrily. Yes, that's why your father is inferior to him. Because the questions were indeed wrong, your father's first place in the competition became a joke. The old man's face showed deep wrinkles. But your father's research always lagged behind Gu Xiangwen's. When Gu Xiangwen's research on the blue planet's magnetic field had a major breakthrough, your father finally couldn't take the pressure. At that time, the famous genius physicist Ishihara Baisan, who had already made a name for himself in Japan, committed seppuku. I will avenge father. The young man waved his fist. Even if father can't compare to Gu Xiangwen, I, Ishihara Taro, will definitely not be worse than his daughter, Gu Nianji. The old man looked at him deeply. Can you? Grandfather, I used the chaotic order algorithm to predict a series of events, and almost all of them were correct. Ishihara Taro was excited, and his handsome face flushed red. The old man looked at Ishihara Taro's follower. Tufei speak. Tufei Higashihara was a plump middle-aged man who was less than 1.5 meters tall. He also knelt on the ground and began to explain to the old man what Ishihara Taro had done. President, young master is indeed very impressive. He analyzed our information and came to the conclusion that Gu Nianji would not go to the military to participate in the cultural performance. Instead, she would go to their class's Christmas party. After the party, she would not go home by herself. Instead, she would go back to school with Hijichu. All of these were correct. We used certain channels to find people to tamper with Hijichu's car, and they successfully drove away from the bar. These were all true events that happened, and it was exactly the same as young master's chaotic prediction. The old man laughed. What else? You tampered with more than just putting things in Hijichu's car, right? Tufei Higashihara hung his head in shame. The surveillance camera in the parking lot of the Golden Collar Bar was damaged by our people a few days ago. What? The young man jumped up in shock. You're saying that it was damaged by itself? Tufei Higashihara did not dare to look Ishihara Taro in the eyes. The old man raised his hand to calm Ishihara Taro down. Taro, sit down. Don't get angry over such a small matter. Have you forgotten your father's lesson? Ishihara Taro's eyes were bloodshot. After a while, he slowly sat down and faced the old man. Grandfather, you're right. The old man patted his head. That's right. It's okay if you fail. What's important is not to be arrogant when you win, and not to be discouraged when you lose. Ishihara Taro was so moved that tears welled up in his eyes. Grandfather, go and think about how to optimize your algorithm. The old man was giving him a beating before giving him a beating. I'll give you 2 more chances. Prove to me that your algorithm can really be applied in practice. If Ishihara Taro could really succeed, then this would be the real killing without using a knife. The law would not be able to punish him at all. The old man looked forward to it. Ishihara Taro left the old man's courtyard with his subordinates and returned to his apartment in the imperial capital's CBD. Watching his thin but upright figure disappear in front of the bamboo fence, the old man rubbed the space between his eyebrows. His body could not take it anymore. The middle-aged woman wearing a koi kimono quickly came over to support him. She comforted him and said, "Mr. Ishihara, young master is very smart. You don't have to be so hasty." "How can I not be hasty?" The old man's voice was very low. "We're about to lose the lawsuit. Once the foundation's money is pursued, our entire company will go bankrupt." Ishihara Taro returned to the apartment that he lived in alone. He turned on his computer and began to calculate all kinds of programs again. This time, it was clearly a flawless algorithm that was targeted at Gunyenji. He did not know what went wrong, but for the first time she managed to escape unscathed from that car. He was indignant and personally went to the school to look for her for the second time. He only wanted to let her get hit once and teach her a lesson. He did not expect that such a small wish would not come true. He re-examined the first mistake and felt that it was because his own people had interfered too much. The chaotic and orderly algorithm should be completely natural and free of interference. Their own people had first destroyed the cameras in the parking lot, then sent people to release the car. Just these two incidents had shaken the fundamental foundation of the chaos theory. Yes, that must be it. Ishihara Taro pursed his lips tightly and planned to plan another operation. This time, other than the initial flapping of butterfly wings, he could not allow any external interference to be mixed in. Tuifei-kun, give me the information of the verified account that you have previously contacted. The more detailed the information, the better. Ishihara Taro ordered. Yes. The verified account that had started the rumor quickly received a letter from Hijichu's lawyer. He looked at the carefully worded lawyer's letter and couldn't believe his eyes. He had really sent him a lawyer's letter. He wanted him to apologize and compensate the other party for the loss of 30 million yuan. What the F***ck? So capable? Why don't you go to heaven? The verified account was so angry that he tore up Hijichu's lawyer's letter and angrily called the person who had previously exposed him. He did not expect that the number could no longer be reached. It was an empty number. And the account that had exposed him had long been deleted and had disappeared without a trace. You want me to take the blame alone? The verified account laughed coldly. Ishihara Corporation, do you think that I am a pushover? After messing around in the study for the whole morning, he found the official website of the Ishihara Corporation and sent a warning letter to them. In the end, the other party directly rejected his email. No matter how many accounts he changed, it was useless. The verified account was so angry that he almost smashed his computer. At noon he was really hungry. He rubbed his stomach and stood up, planning to go out to eat something and relax. When he came out of the elevator, he looked at the endless blue sky and took a deep breath before walking to the parking lot. He had to cross a street to get to the parking lot from his apartment building. The parking lot was on the other side of the street, and the apartment building was on the other side. Their apartment building had an underground parking lot, but he had wanted to save money when he bought the house, so he did not buy an underground parking space. He regretted it later and could only buy a parking space in the parking lot opposite the apartment building. It wasn't too far. She just had to cross a narrow street. There was a small stall on the street that sold newspapers and magazines. He habitually stopped and flipped through a few, then put them down under the stare of the stall owner. He did not buy them either. On the other side of the street, an old lady hobbled over. She was also a resident here and was used to walking around at this time every day. There was a bus stop on the side of the street and two young people were waiting there. The verified account owner looked at the people waiting for the bus proudly, and instantly felt that he was superior because he had a private car. Not far away, someone was dragging a cart of briquettes and was working hard, huffing and puffing. The orange bus was almost here, and the next stop was at this stop sign. At this moment, a shiny coin suddenly rolled to the feet of the middle-aged man who was dragging the cart of briquettes. The middle-aged man saw that it was a shiny gold coin, and his footsteps subconsciously slanted to the side. He did not expect that there would be a shallow pit next to him. The moment he stepped into it, he lost his balance and immediately stumbled, causing the cart of briquettes to roll down. The old lady hurriedly dodged the rolling briquettes and walked a few steps forward. Seeing this, the verified account owner did not want to be caught by the old lady, so he also quickened his footsteps, wanting to cross the street. The bus driver happened to be attracted by the overturned cart of briquettes on the side of the road and forgot to step on the brakes, so he continued at the same speed. There was a loud bang. The verified account owner, who was about to run across the road, was instantly hit by the bus that did not stop according to the stop sign, and then fell to the ground far away. After a bout of convulsions, he stopped breathing before the ambulance arrived. The young man in black standing not far away smiled slightly and hurried past with his backpack. This is the first 3,400-word chapter. Today's third chapter is asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the monthly votes are 4,500 plus chapters. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the third chapter. P.S. Thank you to Momo Moshi for the 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Mwah. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.